Welcome to Fiction Audiobooks. If you enjoy the content, like and subscribing would be greatly appreciated. If you have any recommendations for novels, comment below.
Please join my Patreon at https://www.patreon.com/fictionaudiobook.
I woke up and almost felt like I was underwater for a moment, but what I was surrounded by was a bunch of thick blue goo. I was surrounded by slimes, with one particularly large one directly on top of me, who all collectively were trying to send me calming feelings. It helped a bit, but the nightmare I had would take a lot more than calming thoughts to dispel. Wait, where did all these slimes even come from? My little house was packed with them, deep inside the sealed cave. I felt around a bit with universal perception, trying to figure out where they came from. Honestly, most of them felt like they came from Veldora. So they must have wandered here, in search of me. But why? Your distress was projected through your aura, attracting the other slimes to you. It is a natural instinct for slimes to gather and protect each other in times of danger. Guess I have to keep them now. I couldn't shoo the things off when they just wanted to help. I tried to gently wiggle my way out from under the largest slime, but as soon as I moved, so did it. The slime seemed insistent on keeping me squished safely underneath its body. Okay, this is not working. Not wanting to harm any of the slimes with how tightly packed together they all were inside, I just used spatial domination to escape to the outside of my home. I decided to take a look at myself, but I wanted to look with my eyes. I felt like I'd really been letting go of my earthly self recently. Both for the better and worse. What better way to remedy that than a quick look in the mirror? As I inched my way up to the mirror pool in the cave, illuminated by the soft glow of magi crystals all around us, I was slowly introduced to Shizu. I had that sharp womanly look, just a bit younger. Like a little, young teenage Shizu. Albeit, with a notable increase in beauty, the resemblance was still uncanny. I fell away from the mirror pool, in a shock and with a surge of guilt creeping into me. Shizu's students had been taken from me, and I felt like who I saw there was a punishment for that. If I still had those breathing reflexes, I would have been hyperventilating. Instead, I felt my form bubbling and writhing beneath my skin. My body responding to distress in more and more of an inhuman way. Staring at Shizu's face again though, it reminded me of something else. I badly needed, to get her mask back. Yuki had broken it, and I needed to find the pieces, wherever they were. So, without a moment of consideration, I used my teleport gate to go back to Inglesia. What was Inglesia? I reminded myself. The destruction still raged around me, even after days, maybe even weeks. I couldn't be sure exactly how much time passed. 6 days have passed since Valpurgis. Thanks, partner. I liked Raphael. They were so refined, yet human. It was refreshing to feel like I was talking to a person. Say, could you help me search for the mask? If they are here, we will find them. Considering the presence of enemies in the surrounding lands, however, a time limit is advised. 3 hours should be satisfactory. That makes sense. Good idea. Thank you for looking out for me. I felt some small memento from Raphael, a little positive sentiment. It was unusual, but nice. We didn't end up finding the pieces of Shizu's mask. Not even a splinter of the thing. I was laying face down in the mud, just about ready to slam my face into the earth. I'd already been here 3 hours, so I couldn't stay any longer. Otherwise I'd risk some human showing up trying to defeat me or something, I was sure. We'd searched every nook and cranny of the Colosseum, the Free Guild headquarters, the Inglesia Royal Palace. Nowhere, the mask was nowhere. Not even a whiff of its anti-magic effect. In the end, we got to the end of our time limit, and had to turn tail and go back to Jura. I felt useless, not even able to recover the sole possession of my first human friend in this world. Standing at the mirror pool, I found myself staring at my face again. I was less spooked now, so I got a closer look. Shimmering in the changing colors of the crystals all around me, I saw my blue locks, my deep golden eyes, my pale white skin and perfect complexion. I really was beautiful. Not that I had anyone to admire that little fact. Master is objectively attractive, in all forms. Heh, nice try, Raphael. You're just trying to make me feel better. The reaction I got that time was different, the skill almost seemed frustrated with my response, and went silent for a moment. Then it spoke again, more monotone. The analysis of unlimited imprisonment has been completed. The release of individual, Veldora Tempest, is possible at any time. You finished the analysis? When? During your 6-day period of rest. I wanted to question why Raphael hadn't told me right when it finished, but it probably didn't want to bother me or something. I don't really have time to deal with him right now. I pondered on what to do for him. I really did need the company, but at the same time, I was almost worried to even let him out of my stomach. I couldn't lose him too, if worse came to worst. I guess we can let him out of the seal. Keep him in my stomach though. I communicated the intent to my partner after a very long thought acceleration session, even if in the real world a drop of dew hadn't even fully split from the stone perch it was hanging from. Just make sure he's okay with that. Veldora has confirmed consent. He wishes to explain further after the seal is broken. In an instant, I felt the aura of my sworn brother writhing around inside my stomach. The pressure was a lot to handle for a moment before he calmed down. A few moments after all that, he began talking to me. Rimuru. It's been so long since we've spoken. You must tell me everything you've wanted to say all this time. It really didn't seem easy to do that when we weren't standing face to face. Little hard when we're not in front of each other. That's but a trifle to overcome. Manifest here, in my own little abode. I can do that. I felt like I was better off not knowing that, otherwise I may become a neat in my own stomach. This is true. Proceeding with manifestation in 3, 2, 1. I opened my eyes and found myself in an endless inky black void, with an imposing dragon hunched in front of me. Veldora stands to his full height and roars, in a showy way. Welcome, Rimuru Tempest. He then gestured to me, which I didn't get. I shrugged it off, and reached up to Veldora. He seemed to get the gesture, reaching down with a claw for me to grasp onto. We exchanged a moment of knowing gaze, and smiled, even if mine was half-hearted at best. It was good to see my brother again. Veldora took notice, moving to pat my head. Everyone treated me like a kid, it seemed. Recent events have been unfortunate, Rimuru. I truly am sorry for you. After that, he somehow managed to smile. You are moving up in the world, though. You should be proud. His voice was softer than I expected from such a large dragon, and almost brotherly. It was just a little comforting. I wouldn't be pulled into the bright side so fast. Yeah, big guy. I understand that, but what about you? You must not be satisfied staying here, it has to be lonely. You'd be surprised. Veldora moved slightly, revealing that he was shielding 3 beings I recognized from view. Ifrit, that demon I acquired miasma from, and the phantom that had attacked my students and Tis. 2 were cowing before me, and 1 was more aroused. Ick. I especially wasn't expecting that, and didn't have the mental bandwidth for any of it. Veldora pushed the 3 aside, and blocked my view of them. Oh Rimuru, I've been meaning to say this. Your human form truly is useful. It's allowed you to trounce around the human lands so freely. I must say I'm jealous. I found that amusing, coming from an imposing beast of nature. Huh, you think so? Well, you could always just make your own, right? I'm sure a true dragon can do whatever they want. Oh. Maybe you're right. Veldora got a certain look of wonder, but I wasn't sure he could actually manage it. Well, even with the company, I'm sure you want to get out of here and stretch your wings, right? There was no way I was gonna believe he was really satisfied staying here, even with 3 roommates to keep him company. No, no. You don't understand, Rimuru. Veldora gestured to me broadly. You gave me the opportunity to see things from the perspective of a mundane being. It has been truly interesting. I decided to ignore Veldora calling me boring, he probably didn't mean it. Don't you want to go out and rampage, though? I'm sure that show I gave you in Inglesia got you pumped up. Was I goading him? Yes. But with how upset I was, I didn't care one bit. Veldora stared longingly for a moment. In the end though, he proved the bigger man. No. That's the same old thing I've been doing for as long as I can remember before I was imprisoned. I wish to sit back and watch you, for just a little while longer. While this little argument was going on, I heard someone call out to me in the physical world. Trainee the Dryad was, yet again, trying to get my attention, and by this point she'd resorted to slapping me in the face repeatedly. She'd really gotten overconfident. I'd need to cut her down a peg sometime. Rimuru Tempest, your responsibilities to this forest must be fulfilled before you go off to the human lands to run errands. She really wasn't scared of me, it was refreshing, even if it did feed into her annoying nagging habits. Especially because she wasn't some overpowering presence like Veldora. I rolled my eyes. Yeah. I get that, tree lady. The forest was invaded while you were away. It appears some monsters from the south were attracted by your strong presence, Aurora birds. Trainee snickered, seeming to consider them harmless. Eliminating them would be a good show of force, to your people. They'd seriously followed me all the way here. Maybe becoming a demon lord had one downside, just like Malim said, it made me a beacon for strong opponents. I tried my best to shrug it off and respond in a level way. A show of force to my people, I looked around the cave, grasping for any excuse not to deal with this. Lord Veldora would have jumped at the opportunity for such a thing, and as you've chosen to become a demon lord, it is the approach you should take as well. Trainee didn't know Veldora was back yet, which was great. Otherwise she'd asked to see him, and we weren't ready for that just yet. Trainee smiled in a wry way. She seemed to have cooked up with some serious ammunition. I hear the grilled meat of these monsters is a true delicacy. Many have killed just to taste the small amount that makes it onto the market. I frowned deeply. Did she really think I was so easy to tempt into slaughter? The answer is yes. I dragged several of the largest avian carcasses I'd ever seen into the entrance of the cave. Storing them away would have been easier, but I needed some good old manual labor to distract me from my thoughts. Dragging 5 birds halfway across Jura was just the kind of labor that did that. It was hard and tedious. I had to cut down plenty of trees on the way, and I made sure to stomp on any magical plants I saw along the way, just to get back at my local dryad. She deserved it for sending me on some silly errand like this, even if now I'd finally get to taste the grilled flesh like planned. I was quick to turn my fingers into knife-like claws the moment I got back to the mirror pool. Making quick work of each corpse, and with Raphael's assistance, I made all the cuts I was familiar with. Drumsticks, wings, breasts, thighs, gizzard. All the greats. It was enough to distract me just a little while longer. Every moment counted. Really, I'd spent 3 days hunting those damned birds, and these were the last I'd killed before the flock finally retreated. Some evolved form that was far bigger and meaner, not like the 3-headed one I'd seen in Frey's territory. These ones were more like elemental varieties with psychic abilities. They tried to get into your mind and hold you in place while they blasted their specific brand of elemental attack. Unfortunately for them, Raphael made my mind an impenetrable fortress. Then, I set up a fire pit. Using some of the trees I'd cut down along the way as fuel, and set up a massive grill plate made of magi steel. It wasn't long before it was brown hot. I carefully spiced up every cut, and made my own sauce of some of the aforementioned squashed magic plants, before slathering it all together. Finally, I arranged each cut in a delicate array, and put a glass dome on top so I could watch them cook, while evening out the heat inside. I had a feeling the different elements of these birds would mean different cook times, so I wanted to keep a close eye on them. It was only once I'd actually gotten my first bird off the grill that Veldora spoke up to me. Rimuru. I must show you something. Sighing, I slipped the bird into my stomach. Then engaged thought acceleration completely, and manifested myself in front of Veldora. Who I was met with was distinctly not who I was expecting. It was a chiseled tin hunk of man with bright blonde hair and stark golden eyes. What do you think, Rimuru? It took some effort, but I've managed a human form just like you said. That's great. I felt like I'd have been blushing if I still could, and was trying my hardest to keep my eyes pointed toward the ceiling. Really didn't get why Veldora decided to become a human though. How does it feel? Small. Veldora made a show of running around in circles and spreading his arms out like the wings of a plane. I don't understand how your kind survived its infancy. Couldn't help but chuckle at that. There's plenty of debate about that back on Earth. Really, his childlike excitement was contagious sometimes. It was hard not to get lost in it. When the thought of children came to mind again though, I felt a pain deep in my gut. It was plenty enough to ruin the mood for me. I have to go, Veldora. What's wrong, Rimuru? Surely you aren't planning on leaving so soon. Veldora stopped with a skid right in front of me, and put a hand on my head. Maybe this new form could let me help you with your mission. I gently pushed his hand off of me. I don't think that's a good idea. Your aura is scarier than mine. I didn't even think a normal human could mistake Veldora for a normal guy, no matter how he dressed. They might not even survive an audience with him. Not that it would be Veldora's fault. Magicule poisoning is a serious concern for anyone around such gargantuan monsters. Surely there are ways around that you just haven. Hey Veldora, just make sure to put some clothes on next time. Humans prefer you wear them. I left it at that, unable to listen any longer. Veldora was doing his best to offer help, but at the same time, he was just too cheery. I couldn't deal with it. The carefree nature of the storm dragon just didn't fit my current circumstances. No matter how thankful I was to him for naming me, and being my friend. I wouldn't forget that. Never. Handling the joy was just too jarring. The best way to thank Veldora for his friendship was taking my role as the guardian of his forest more seriously, so today I sought out training myself. I wanted to see what she wanted me to do next, even if I was certain it would be a headache. To my immense distaste, I found her creating a throne for me high up on top of the mountain which Veldora's cave sat inside. Around it was a clearing that was decorated like some medieval courtroom, with the tapestries, frescoes, and banners. It was all made out of unusual materials. I didn't know tree bark came in so many colors, especially not on the same tree. It couldn't be natural. She'd made a show of depicting all my feats, with the recent addition of a painting of striking down the last of the aurora birds with a bolt of lightning. It was a lightning elemental itself, but I had wanted to see if that resistance would save it. It didn't. Lord Rimuru, you made it. I've conscripted the local spirits to build a temple in your honor. Trainee grabbed my arm and eagerly dragged me up to the throne. You arrived just in time. I've been arranging a meeting of the forest's leaders, and that includes you. They are coming to give their thanks. So, I'm assuming this seat is mine. I groaned, staring at the spiky black stone chair she'd made for me. It really was straight out of a weeboo's sketchbook. Of course, wouldn't you like to try it out? Trainee gave a long stare. It wasn't a question. Damn plant woman. I guess I could take a seat. I approached it, and turned around, plopping into it. The stone was carefully carved with a rounded divot. Shockingly comfortable to laze in. Closing my eyes, I let myself drift off for a few moments. Not bothering with watching the outside world, Raphael could handle that. I was sure she'd wake me when the first of these leaders arrived. What I woke up to was a slime hopping into my lap, with a notification from Raphael. The second strongest slime in the forest has arrived, it desires an audience with you. I opened my eyes to see an ordinary blue slime, the typical Euron variety. No. Maybe it was a bit stronger than others, but nothing too special in my eyes. I gave the little guy a pat. Trainee was standing to my left, and the court had since been filled with a whole herd of slimes. A lot of them were the same ones that had been piled on top of me during my evolutionary slumber. It made sense these guys would be the first to my coronation, and I didn't mind their presence. As far as the first real emissary goes, it wasn't some monster like I was expecting. They weren't a human either, though. Instead, I was greeted by a tall man with sharp features, long pointy ears, and thin white hair. Despite his otherwise perfect form, he had deep bags under his eyes. Hark, Honorable Lord Rimuru. The Elder of the Elves of Jura requests an audience with thee. One of the several armored guards called out to me, not really seeming to read the field, and take note of no one else here. I'm not doing anything. I took it that you were conversing with your second-in-command. The elf gestured to the slime in my lap. Ah. I was starting to feel there was a reason I'd never heard of the elves of Jura, and that they seemed all but extinct. What brings you to me, Elder? I didn't want to keep talking to this guard guy, and just hoped the Elder would be better conversation. In a moment, the elven elder was on the ground with his forehead firmly planted in the dirt. Demon Lord Rimuru. We beg for your aid, our lands have been ravaged by an extended, brutal conflict between the bovoid and equinoid races. Our numbers are dwindling as some of us have fled the situation to find a place in other lands, and I fear if things continue to go as they have been that Jura's elves will eventually be no more. Please, great demon lord, put an end to the conflict my people and their homes have been swept up into without us even participating. I'd zoned out halfway through the elder's yapping. He really was an old man, even if he didn't look like one. Partner, please summarize that mess for me. He is asking for your assistance in stopping a war between the equinoid and bovoid races. The Euron elf tribes share a territory with them and have suffered many losses because of it. So you want me to go knock some heads to stop your people from being bullied to extinction? I heard Trainee softly groan to my side, but I ignored it. If you would be so gracious. The elven elder made a show of pressing his forehead deeper into the dirt somehow. Well, I guess I can't have my own people fighting all the time. So, you know what? Sure. I'll take a look into it after all this. I remembered the bovoids some, they are jerks. I was sure they'd show up to at least challenge me, or something. I gestured for the elves to find a seat, they'd be staying while I solved their issues I bet, so they might as well spectate. The elves listened quietly, which was good. Because it wasn't long before a loud troop of monsters showed up, shouting, hollering, and singing, all at the same time. It was none other than the lizardmen. They were trying to literally sing my praises. Unfortunately, most of them were terrible singers, especially my old buddy who was standing in the front next to his father. Gabaru, and the chief of the lizardmen, Abiru. I wasn't feeling particularly creative after I finished off the orc disaster, was I? They didn't seem to care about that though, they were just happy to see me grow even stronger. Honor us with your grand wisdom, Lord Rimuru. Abiru wasn't yelling, but he could still be heard throughout the clearing anyway. The other lizardmen could learn a few things from the old coot. Hi, Chief Abiru, it's good to see you again. I opened with as bright a smile I could, but looking at myself with magic sense it was still barely lit. Nothing like my usual sunbeams. Lord Rimuru. Are you well? I can feel you are unhappy. Now Gabaru had taken over the conversation, stepping in front of his father and giving me a genuine stare. Perhaps you would prefer a solo performance. I am sure I can improve your mood. I didn't have the chance to actually say anything to the lizardman before he started singing loudly. Oh, glorious demon lord. We are your faithful sworn. We will be your sword. Defend you from the human scorn. Raising a hand, I communicated with my aura for him to stop. I did my best to appreciate the attempt, but he didn't know half the situation. Those lyrics sort of hurt. It's alright Gabiru, there's no need to cheer me up. I tried to be nice, and gestured for him to step aside. I am glad you came, you lizardmen have always been loyal. I'd be pleased to keep you all as an audience. Do you have any requests though? If you would, I request that you inform me of any plans you currently have for my people. There was tension to those words. Did he think that I was going to turn into an overbearing tyrant? You can keep operating business as usual, Abiru. You're a capable leader, I don't see any reason to stick my nose in your business unless you decide to stir up trouble. Abiru visibly relaxed. Maybe you could help me with something though, we'll see later. Leaving it with that seemed reasonable, I may need his leadership prowess in the future. Plus he could reach out to remote tribes for me. Of course, Lord Rimuru. Just say the word and we can discuss such things. I smiled, happy to have someone to go to for people I couldn't personally talk to. Which would be great for a powerful monster like me. After that I moved on, letting the lizardmen join the audience. Really wish I had prepared food ahead of time. If I knew I'd be hosting some big party, I would've. Trainee didn't give me any warning for that, and it didn't seem like she considered food an important thought herself. Did dryads even need to eat? Maybe they just photosynthesize. What even are dryads anyway? Tree spirits, if fiction from my previous world was anything to rely on for that. Still, I'd never directly asked Trainee before, but I did know she really didn't seem very solid. So her real body had to be somewhere else, and the body she talks to me with is just some magic projection of sorts. Those were all questions for later. The next person to walk up was also someone I knew, kinda. Orda, the orc I'd named to be their new leader. He was larger than I remembered from the last time I saw him. Stronger too, magicule-wise. He silently stood in front of me, and it became awkward really quickly. Me just quietly staring back at the orc with very little idea of what he wanted. Ah, hey there. I tried to strike up some kind of conversation. That was enough to startle him, apparently. He was close to shaking just standing in front of me. I had good reason to just feel bad for the guy. I guess the orcs really did fear me. Another thing to not to feel great about. Well, thank you for all your service. I hear you've done a bang-up job out there, buddy. You've really helped your kind integrate and make themselves useful. I felt like I was on the other side of a certain interaction I'd had in my last life. My boss called me in for a sudden meeting with one of the higher-ups, with Tensura. The kid was terrified he'd get fired. Instead, we were just congratulated on our performance. I hoped it didn't seem like I was just doing a gift card handoff. The orc huffed and nodded. Thank you. It really seemed to be the best the big guy could manage, his kind really was just afraid of me. Trainee, show this fine monster to a seat. He's earned that much. I decided not to keep this going if the big guy couldn't talk any longer. Yet, I was pleasantly surprised. Please. Wait. Lord Rimuru, I have others. I must speak for them. The goblin tribes cannot handle your presence. Therefore, they have requested I pass on their deep gratitude to you, and their sworn allegiance. He said more for the goblins than he said for the orcs. Maybe he wasn't so bad. Thank you for passing along the message. How about the orcs though? I wanted to see if I could get that much out of him. Our allegiance stays with you. We will serve. Orda, at that, made his way to a seat on the ground. Even sitting on the floor, there were people here he towered over. The next interaction may have been the most annoying, but not the worst, you'll understand that later. I was confronted with one horse-headed man and one minotaur pushing their way through my small, but growing audience. They showed little care for those around them, and truly just seemed focused on getting to me first. I put on a scowl as they approached. They were interrupting my court. These are the representatives of the Meza tribe, and Goza tribe, respectively. They were the warring factions of which the elven elder spoke. In that case, I had every excuse to be upset. The way they barged in showed these two didn't care about anyone else at all. The Gozu was first to speak, shoving the Mezu aside and more or less yelling at me. Lord Rimuru. We, the Gozu, have sought your aid for some time. You see, your show of strength to us. It left an impact among our people. Allow us to serve you as faithful guardians, and all we ask in return is the extermination of these disgusting horses. Even though he was declaring loyalty, there still was an irritating feeling of arrogance and entitlement to the way he talked. But he was oddly well-spoken, maybe he'd been practicing ever since our last apparent meeting. I did vaguely remember crashing through a village of minotaurs and roughing a few of them up. The Meza didn't take the shove lying down, and only seemed to wait for the Gozu to stop talking to get the element of surprise. He slammed his hooked foot into the bullman's gut, sending him tumbling. No, Lord Rimuru. Allow us to serve as your guardians. We have never underestimated you. We knew from the start you were a powerful leader. Help us, the Mezu, exterminate the Gozu. Let me serve you, no, let me serve you, pui to all of that. I sat up and spread out my aura, surrounding the two with it and forcing them to kneel. It took a surprising amount of force to make them do it. You'll both behave, or the only way you'll serve me is as lunch. I put extra venom in the words to make sure my anger got across. The two didn't fight at that, falling quiet, finally. Now, you will both stay here, and be polite to even the lowliest monster. I have matters to talk to both of you about after this is over. I leaned back in my chair and let them shuffle away before deciding to tease in a more playful way. Pulling the slime from earlier into my lap again, I called the two out. This is the only guard I need, after all. I made extra sure to gesture at the little guy. After bathing in my aura for several days, man, they really weren't far off those two's strength when it came to energy. After those conflict-hungry meatheads, I got a visit from the charming little kobolds. Unfortunately I didn't get to see them up close, they couldn't handle my aura either. Instead, Abiru took up the courtesy of speaking for them. He informed me they wished to swear loyalty, on the condition they could continue their trade with the humans' lands. I, in turn, allowed that on the condition they didn't bring any humans into the forest without telling me first. In all my time, I'd learned this forest was no place for humans. Plus, anyone who could handle it was probably here to challenge me. I wasn't thrilled with the idea of my people bringing enemies right to my doorstep. At least not without me asking them to. Being a leader was getting exhausting. Trainee stepped away and into the middle of the court, and her sisters appeared around her. Lord Rimuru, the remaining tribes cannot speak with you directly. For they cannot handle your presence. Us dryads will speak in their place. I understood that, but it was still upsetting. I'm a danger to my own people. Veldora's voice piped up, as he decided to comfort me himself. It's a common problem at the pinnacle of the world, Rimuru. It can be lonely, but at least we have each other. I smiled, it was true. After all the formal bullshit, we finally moved on to festivities. Eating, drinking, the good stuff. The kobolds had thought ahead, bringing food and drink as tribute. So we could all enjoy the evening. I found myself sitting on my throne in slime form, just a little bit dazed. Dealing with people all day had left me drained. Unfortunately though, it wasn't over. I had one last, particularly unpleasant audience. A group of humans made an oddly cordial entrance into the clearing, making their way through the partying monsters. Going somehow unnoticed. Well, except for Trainee and I. She had a gaze fixed on them from the start, clearly getting an unsavory feeling. Yet, all the small group did was come to me and kneel. I knew they had at least one with them unwillingly. An elf girl with a bag firmly tied to her head. It made my insides bubble with a tiny bit of anger, especially considering the story I'd heard of elves going missing. This had to be one of the groups they were going to. For what, I wasn't sure. I had an inkling forming though. The leader of the group was a slender man with greasy black hair and a patch on his eye. He clearly didn't exactly respect my appearance, because he was trying hard not to look at me directly. The gall of a stifled chuckle in front of me. I entered human form to make talking to them easier, and pulled my slime companion into my lap. The second strongest slime and I had really bonded over the evening. They were expressing all sorts of cool things to me, like the time they probably ate a beehive, considering the feelings were sharp, sweet, buzz, goo. I felt a bit calmer holding them as a result. Seeing my change in appearance to something he probably found more palatable, the leader of the group rose and introduced himself. Lord Rimuru, our sincerest apology for intruding. My name is Reynolds. This is my adventuring party. State your purpose. I didn't want to put any bit of fake happiness into my tone, I got all sorts of creepy vibes from this dude. The men bowed. Of course, my lord. We were sent here to discover your whereabouts, with your forest being so grand. The remnants of the Free Guild wish to know where you make home. Didn't want them knowing any of that, to be honest. The Free Guild had a thing out for me, and I knew that at least. I destroyed their headquarters completely when I attacked Inglesia. I can feel your paws, mighty demon lord. Reynolds put his hands out to show he was unarmed. You would never wish an army on your doorstep, and for my own sake, neither would I. We may lie, if you so wish. Closing my eyes, I let Raph take a crack at figuring these guys out. It can be assumed these humans are attempting to force you into an ultimatum. That's what it felt like. Reynolds was seriously buttering it up so far. Taking it head on, I put on a confident tone. Tell me, Reynolds. Why would you do something like that for a true monster like me? Understand me well, Lord Rimuru. Pretentious asshole. We have certain activities in this forest, for which we seek your blessing. Truly, we wish for nothing but a good, mutually beneficial relationship. And what would those activities be, human? I pat the slime to stay calm while the hammer dropped. I couldn't just go ballistic, not with so many of my people here. Not again. You see, Lord Rimuru. We understand you are a hunter yourself, you've made grand shows of your hunts in the past. We too, could be called hunters. He finally tore the bag from the face of the elf hostage he'd been keeping. And these creatures are our bounty. I was only barely holding myself back, and I had to rely on Trainee to shield the view of the elven emissaries. Such a mess. Reynolds smiled broadly. I thought bringing one for you would be a token of our appreciation for your lands which have made us so wealthy. They sell very well among the nobles of the West. They were slavers. Slavers who were stealing my people. Insignificant bugs that deserved nothing but a boot crushing them into a gooey paste. I silently stared, considering my next move very, very carefully. I didn't need thought acceleration for it, but I did need a moment to think about how to kill them without much collateral damage. I see you are taken aback, but please know, we are aware we must offer more. We will provide tribute for each successful hunt, a consistent slice of our proceeds. Reynolds then pulled at the bag of another man, who still knelt in front of me. He revealed it was filled to the brim with gold coins. Of course, we brought one in advance, as a show of faith. Not being able to listen to another word from the sniveling trashbag's mouth, I just announced my position. No. Reynolds held his chest, feigning hurt. Someone like yourself has surely done far worse. Someone like yourself also surely knows, we could tell far stronger adversaries of your nesting place. I almost wanted to chuckle at that. We know you may kill us, but we have a camp ready to scatter. Each of them holding a message for the Holy Church of Luminous. Reynolds put on a broad, disgusting smile. If we do not return alive, and with a yes, at least one will pass it along. I actually did start laughing. These humans were just too much. An opportunistic slime like yourself could never stand to the organized power of the Holy Cha. My laughter deafened him, as I let it grow louder. I took my chance to take control of the conversation. You know what? Slimes are opportunists. We are feisty little creatures when we need to be. Little predators. I urged the slime in my lap to move forward with my feelings. I'll give you a demonstration. Reynolds pulled a blade from his boot, one I knew he'd been concealing. What could a single slime do? Single. A massive purple tendril emerged from the ground and pinned the man. Immediately his clothes started dissolving. It wasn't long before that rocky slime had captured the entire group, with the exception of the elf prisoner. She was pulled to safety by a very, very brave lizardman woman. Slimes from all over the little court clearing were amassing atop the group of slavers. Fighting, pushing, and writhing. Each of them pulling for even the smallest morsel. I was most proud of my little buddy, they managed to get a whole human all to themselves. As a bonus, it was the guy with the bag of gold. The slime got a bit more opaque and gained a nice golden hue. Reynolds was given a much worse fate, torn apart by almost a dozen weaker slimes. They dissolved him alive. I couldn't be more proud of my kind. What did I do to make all this happen? It's simple. All I did was offer my kind a meal, and they came running to get their fill. The results were better than I was expecting, and I considered naming my little buddy sometime in the future, especially with them making themselves stand out so much. It seemed like the golden color was a permanent thing. I had other matters to attend to though, as I took flight. Weeding out that little camp they talked about, and maybe offering it up as another meal for my wonderful fellow slimes. Lord Rimuru is something beyond mortal comprehension. Seeing him before already told you he was abnormal. But seeing him now told you that only certain death awaited the smallest slight. Clearly, the humans standing before him were too conceitful to see their own folly. I could feel sympathy for the elf. She was truly in a situation no being should have to experience, owned and abused. Even many animals get better treatment. Lord Rimuru wouldn't stand for it. Those elves live in Jura, his domain, meaning they belong to him, not these humans. Yet, Lord Rimuru allowed these humans to think he was humoring them. They were making a terrible mistake. His anger only grew with each passing moment, and everyone here could feel it. My father had wore a stony expression as he watched alongside everyone, while I could tell my brother Gabiru was practically boiling over with anger. He had gained something of a fascination with Rimuru, and had not stopped speaking of our guardian since they first met. It almost seemed like he was in love. Though he wasn't that stupid, I knew that at least. We have been half expecting him to run off any day to directly serve our new demon lord ever since he left us after defeating the orcs. With father's regained strength after his naming, Gabiru's position as heir was no longer as urgently needed. I knew father would be fine with Gabiru leaving to pursue that newfound interest in our lord if he chose to. But back to the matter at hand, I knew I had to hold back my brother. I could tell he was about to spring into action and take care of the humans for Lord Rimuru, which would be the ultimate show of disrespect. It would be to consider Lord Rimuru weak, unless it was his direct order. A demon lord is a being that should never require assistance. I grabbed Gabiru's arm before he could do anything stupid. He glared at me, but I ignored it. This was for his own good. He should not get involved with something like this, he would surely die. It did not matter if he saw himself as a friend of the demon lord before us. We'd met Lord Rimuru only a handful of times, and surely he only barely remembered us. I didn't release my brother until he accepted the situation, or at least seemed to accept the situation, even if he was forcing himself to. But while we were squabbling, something had changed. Lord Rimuru had started laughing, loudly. I felt an imminent sense of danger in his aura and had to stop myself from shivering because of it. You know what? Slimes are opportunists. We are feisty little creatures when we need to be. Little predators. I'll give you a demonstration. He then released the slime on them, and I suddenly felt pity for the humans. Slime's methods of hunting were notoriously brutal, even if the ones in Jura are typically docile. What could a single slime do? One of the humans questioned, pulling out his blade that I knew would prove useless against his executioner. Then I realized that the elf was still among the humans, surely Lord Rimuru wouldn't. Single. At that prompting, a massive purple slime emerged from the ground and began to engulf the group of humans. The elf woman was in the middle of it all, screamed in terror at what was happening. She didn't deserve this, she was just a victim. I couldn't let her meet the same fate as her captors. I launched myself forward, grabbed the elf, and carried her to safety. Nobody tried to stop me. It was only after the fact that I realized, by interfering, I had just insulted my demon lord. I am just as bad as my brother, what was I thinking? I decided that I could at least spare this innocent elf, so I returned her to her people, who were still in attendance. Before turning to face my fate. Yet the demon lord had already left, flying off into the distance. I dusted off my hands as I took in the scene around me. That idiot Reynolds was telling the truth when he said the camp was ready to scatter. That was exactly what they tried to do the moment they spotted me, but I wasn't about to just let them get away. A barrier separating them from the rest of the world, one I'd taken inspiration from unlimited imprisonment to make, had been plenty enough to keep them all contained. After that I began to let them run, slowly following each of them until they could not continue, until they were winded and slowed down. Steadily keeping up, and being right behind each and every one of them. I'd make sure others could see when I did it, when I tore them to pieces in front of their comrades with my bare hands. When I left their still screaming torso to fall to the ground and bleed out, never moving to kill instantly. They deserved what came to them. They wouldn't be stealing any more of my people. I did leave one alive, though. Raphael had singled him out as the ideal type to scare into silence about my whereabouts, while also delivering a very specific message for me. He was sitting on the ground, cowering at my feet after I'd snapped his sword in half and roughed him up a bit. His face was a mess of tears, snot, dirt, and blood, but he was relatively unscathed compared to the rest of this camp of slave-trading sickos. I crouched down so that we were eye to eye and the men went completely still, not even breathing as I stared at him. "You are going to deliver a message for me," I said, my voice a perfect combo of firm and quiet. "To the Holy Church, and whoever else might be interested in coming after me." I paused for a reaction, maybe a nod or something, but the human just kept staring at me, wide-eyed and terrified. "You leave me alone, and I'll leave you alone. It's as simple as that. I have no interest in fighting with you humans, but if you enter Jura, you will be at my mercy. Give me a reason to kill you, and I won't hesitate to do it. Do you understand?" That time, he nodded vigorously. "And for you? You will only tell people that message, and the fact that I wiped out your camp as punishment for crossing me. Nothing more. Promise that." I promise." "Do you actually mean it? Because if you break that promise, I will hunt down everyone you know and love and give them the same fate as the rest of your buddies here." "I mean it. I mean it, I promise. Jay, just let me go, please." I could see in his eyes that he was telling the truth. So, I stood up, and used spatial domination to rip a hole in the air leading to the outskirts of Jura near Blumen's border. Then, in one smooth motion, I picked the man up by his arm and tossed him through it before closing it up. Loudly sighing to myself and dragging my hand through my hair, I internally asked, "What you think, Raphael, did I pull it off?" I had been trying real hard to pull off the whole menacing demon lord thing to hopefully stop nuisances from bothering me for a while, but it wasn't exactly natural for me. It was sufficient for our purposes. Just sufficient. Come on, I thought it was close to perfect. What did I do wrong? You lowered yourself to the human's level. Remaining above him would have been more effective for intimidation. Yes, but intense, close-up eye contact is scarier, right? That's what I was going for. As I said, it was sufficient for our purposes. Your method was not flawless, but nonetheless effective. Grumbling to myself, I took another look at what used to be the slaver camp. Another mess to clean up. I groaned. It wasn't that bad, but I'd still need to do some vacuuming with Beelzebub so it wouldn't look as much like a slaughterhouse. I hadn't exactly been concerned about cleanliness when I was taking my anger out on its inhabitants. But again, this was the Jura forest. The more bestial species of monsters would definitely find the corpses soon anyway, and a bit of rain would wash all the blood off of the ground, so maybe I didn't need to do any cleaning up. I decided on a happy medium. I absorbed and broke down any man-made stuff, things like shredded tents and destroyed equipment, but left the bodies in a convenient pile for nature to take care of for me. Speaking of nature. A certain dryad suddenly materialized, looked around at my handiwork, and frowned slightly before turning her gaze onto me. How far do you plan on going with this endeavor? Only as far as they push me. I released one of them with a warning for the rest. Yes, I heard what you said to that human. It was quite cruel, although that was your intention, I assume. Will you be able to follow through? I didn't appreciate her doubt. Not one bit. I wouldn't have said it if I didn't mean it, I answered a bit sharply. I see, she nodded acceptingly. And that about sums it up, Miss Kigali. Laplace finished his report. He had witnessed it all, the initial attack on Inglesia, the fight between that slime and Yuki's swift victory over it, and then the subsequent massacre. Everything had gone smoothly, at least until it all went wrong. Laplace had felt the moment he was no longer able to get a read on the slime's magic, when it changed into something too complex to understand. Dangerous, was how he had put it. He had felt it on an instinctual level, and Laplace had always had sharp, reliable instincts. He knew right then that Rimuru would break free from his restraints, and that Yuki would stand no chance against him any longer. So he cut his losses and fled. Where from here? What's our plan? He asked. I didn't have an answer for that. Not yet. I need some time to think, Laplace, I said. You should go to Clayman. He would have seen Rimuru Tempest in person at Valpurgis. I would like to hear his opinion on this new demon lord. I almost grimaced, saying that. Even though it was the plan to evolve Rimuru, I did not think the monster was capable of it yet. Yuki believed it was possible, but he didn't seem to understand how absurd of an idea it was that such a young monster would meet all the requirements. Clayman, eh? Laplace asked, seeming reluctant. If you say so. I know he hasn't been himself lately, but his input is still valuable. I'd been worried about Clayman for a while now. Impatient, erratic, much more cruel, nothing like the ambitious, clever, careful, and calculative man he had always been. Something had been getting to him, but I didn't know what, outside of it possibly just being the strain of his role weighing on him. Laplace was worried too, in his own way, although he wouldn't admit it out loud. Maybe the two of them had gotten closer over the years. It was always good to see your children grow up, even if Laplace is more of a friend. Perhaps Rimuru is not as young as he claims. And perhaps he always had a way to hide his true power from Yuki and I. It still felt so wrong for a simple reincarnate to evolve into a demon lord. Something that just couldn't happen. Not so quickly. It takes hundreds of years of dedication and growth for one to evolve into a true demon lord. It just shows whatever Rimuru is, it's not normal. Not something to be crossed, and I'd failed for not catching on sooner. I could not blame Yuki, he was not catching on for one simple reason. Yuki was a child, and children have that unyielding self-confidence. The confidence of a child in the body of a man made him seem like a seasoned tactician, and perhaps he was in some sense. Yet he was still a child. I would not make the same mistake, and we wouldn't be crossing Rimuru. I just needed to know more about him. How best to avoid him? Clayman could give me that much, I hoped. Another hope of mine, maybe a wish. If and when Rimuru goes to face that bastard Leon, I wish for the same fate to befall him that befell me. It would only be fair, and I hoped he couldn't come back from it. I dealt with the slavers and was feeling a bit of satisfaction. At the same time though, looking back on everything I'd done, I felt as if I'd gone too far. I may even have just done an encore to my actions in Rura. Now, I didn't regret what I'd done to the slavers, but the observers. All those monsters, especially the elves. It had to have been terrifying for them. Even if I wasn't looking at myself, or thinking about it at the time. So, I went back to my place on my throne, taking care not to make a sneaky entrance. I made a small show of it by preceding myself with a flash of light, even if I was just using spatial domination to get back there. Trainee followed shortly after, appearing nearby. Most of the leaders were staring at me with apprehension. They were probably expecting me to say something, but that wasn't my main focus at the moment. It was the elf girl. She was sitting quietly with the elven elder's aides, her head hung low, looking completely drained. It was only then that I remembered the way she screamed and the terrified expression her face twisted into when my slimes attacked her captors, and I felt even more that I needed to apologize to her for the way I went about that. Her safety was on my mind then. I'd only told the slimes to attack the humans, so she had been in no danger whatsoever. But I hadn't gone out of my way to communicate that fact to her at that moment, meaning she had no way to know. I debated calling the elf up to me, thinking that was probably the demon lord-iest way of going about this, but quickly realized I had no name to call her up with. Hey, you, wasn't going to cut it here. So I stood up and walked over to her instead. She kept her head low, but I could see her shoulders tense up as I got closer. It's okay, I'm not going to hurt you. Can you show me your face? Trembling, she finally looked up at me. She looks like a character straight out of, never mind, no need to think about my dark past. What's your name? If you have one. Normally I'd introduce myself first, but she likely already knew mine, making that little social rule pointless. Brescia. Sir Demon Lord. She said, her voice a hoarse squeak. I owe you an apology, Brescia. The girl blinked with surprise. I'm sorry for scaring you. My fellow slimes weren't going to attack you, but I'm sure it didn't look that way, right? Brescia cautiously nodded her head in response. Go home to your people, rest and recuperate, and when you're ready, I hope you can tell me more about what happened to you so I can save some of the other victims. I said, giving her my best smile to hopefully ease the tension. Why yes, Lord Rimuru. After that, I backed off and gave her some space. Now I needed to thank the lizardman woman that rescued her. She wasn't that far away and had been watching my entire interaction with the elf. And you, I said, you've got guts. I am sorry for my impudence, Lord Rimuru. Sorry. For what? But I could tell that she was seriously thinking that she'd done something wrong. Did you think I was offended? I asked, failing to hold back a small chuckle. You're thinking too hard about it. I was gonna thank you, not scold you. Thank, she asked in disbelief. Yes. That was very brave, rushing in to rescue the damsel you thought was in distress. As I said, she wasn't in any danger, but you didn't know that. Good work, I said, giving her a thumbs up of approval. The lizard woman bashfully turned her head to one side and blushed. Blushed? How could a reptilian monster blush? I wasn't sure, but she managed it. After a moment of regaining her composure, she answered with, Your words are too kind for me, my lord. I smiled serenely. Well, in my opinion, words aren't good enough. So tell you what, I'm gonna bestow you with a name. I tried to sound more regal at the end, and it was hard. A name. For me. I'm not deserving of such a thing, Lord Rimuru. She was resistant, but I could tell she wouldn't say no if I pushed. I didn't want to do that though, so instead I looked at her father. Abiru stared back at me for a moment in shock, before placing a hand on the girl's shoulder. It would be a great honor for our whole family to possess names. His daughter looked back at him after a moment and nodded. I'm not sure I'm ready for that kind of thing. I'm just your bodyguard. She really was speaking too little of herself, if she was brave enough to step in against me, or at least she thought so. Lord Rimuru may not leave this opportunity open forever, you should take it now. Abiru was a good dad, and I wondered what that'd be like. Too bad I'd never know, at least not in this life. All right. The lizard woman turned to me and looked me in the eyes. I smiled back. Have you made your decision? Yes. She stood a bit taller. I will accept the name. I had to think of one, that was the only problem. Really, this was the first time I was acknowledging she existed. It wasn't like we had spoken to each other before today, I only knew her from seeing her standing nearby Abiru more often than not. So, following from that, maybe just a token of acknowledgement would work. Not like they'd know what it means to me anyway. Sokka. I know, I see, may not seem like that good a name. It's the best I could think of off the top of my head. The Magicules and possible evolution would make up for that. It wasn't long before a flash of light surrounded Sokka, and she limply fell to the ground in deep sleep. It was a lot of Magicules she took, at least by my old standards. It wasn't too much with my new supply. Either way, whatever she became would be a total monster. I should retire. I decided to keep up the regalness as well as I could. I walked over to the golden-colored slime and picked it up. Trainee, see to it that everyone gets home safely. Especially the elves. I ordered her for the first time. Really, I'd never considered doing it, but I'm the demon lord of the Jura forest, right? It should be my domain to order around some spirits who live here. After that I went back to my house in the bottom of the sealed cave. I needed some RNR after that debacle. Sitting at the bottom of the cave's mirror pool was oddly refreshing, especially in slime form. It did cause other tiny slimes to spawn around me, but that is okay. Ultimately, I just needed time to calculate what had just happened, emotionally speaking. I'd actually killed a large group of humans, completely on my own terms. I'd done it in a brutal and violent way too. It hurt that part of me that used to be human, just a bit. I felt like I'd abandoned that part of me some time ago, but clearly it wasn't all gone. Maybe it was just asleep. It would always come back to haunt me from time to time. It caused me to shiver a bit, and at the same time I wanted to laugh. The idea of an all-powerful demon lord being scared of his weak, useless former self, the pitiful human he used to be. I was scared of Satoru though. He knew everything about me and it seemed like he only really showed up in my mind when I was doing something he'd consider wrong. He was wrong though. I was just defending what belonged to me, my people. My monsters. My elves. You love elves, don't you, Satoru? My appeal to him didn't do anything to make the itch of disapproval and disgust disappear, though. Rimuru, am I intruding on something unbecoming? Shizu. Then I heard Shizu's voice. I really was going mad. I'm just trying to put my old self in his place. Thinking he can come into my head and make me feel bad for a bunch of dirty slavers. I really shouldn't have been yelling, there is no reason to yell in your own thoughts. Veldora told me that you may need to speak with me. At least, what's left of me. Veldora shouldn't be telling you what to do, Shizu. You were right about this world, you should go enjoy wherever the rest of you went. This is the part of me that wants to stay with you, Rimuru. To help you get the world you want. Isn't that why you keep going? I don't know why I keep going, Shizu. I really don't. I'd met demon lords, and a true dragon. I'd even become a demon lord myself. Yet I still felt so tiny, vulnerable. Just because I could put on a big face or order around powerful monsters didn't mean my existence wasn't fragile. Yuki had taught me that, I felt so confident. So ready to win when I had decided to face him. Yet he'd taken that from me, and used me. He made me become what I am, I didn't. You seem to think you didn't want to get stronger, Rimuru. Shizu sighed at me mentally, and I felt a hand on my head, even if there was no hand there. Maybe you can't enjoy it yourself, but you can still find my students. You can make the world a better place, for them. I stayed silent in response to what Shizu was saying. How would I do that if I was still so weak? Just because I beat Yuki didn't mean there weren't still people way stronger than me out there. People who like the ways things are, who would go out of their way to stop me. How? It was that simple. I grew stronger each and every day just to save people that would have ended up like me. Can't you do the same, Rimuru? Now I understood why Shizu was with me. What she left behind. Her will to fight, to win. To get what she wanted. I can do that, get stronger. It's all I've done in this world. Right. It had been minutes since I'd told Raphael to go help Rimuru. The skill was far more likely to be able to help than I. I may be Rimuru's sworn brother, but I have never had a crisis of identity. I know who I am. The world tells me who I am. Everyone thinks about who I am, and that informs who I am. It's not something I need to concern myself with. Rimuru though, I could sense he was torn. From inside his stomach I could see he was struggling, pining. He was degrading himself, past and present. Part of this was due to magicule poisoning, a consequence of how fast he was growing after his awakening. The other part of it, though, was due to internal conflicts. Powerful monsters are defined in part by how they see themselves, so a crisis of confidence such as this can be devastating. I did not want to see Rimuru fall to himself. Therefore, I ordered Raphael to assist him. Despite that, I was shocked. Raphael had never been late to our daily training together. Not even a second late. Raphael was a full minute late, and I could feel the time ticking on. That's when the skill appeared before me, not in its usual form of a Rimuru lookalike, but instead it looked as if it was mimicking the appearance of the Shizu that had been here previously. Shizu had already left, but I decided not to question it. It wasn't long before Raphael was back to its ordinary form. Veldora Tempest, my tardiness is no excuse to slack. Begin training this instant. Raphael was immediate with the whip. I had a retort though. I was far too concerned with Rimuru to focus on that, surely you of all beings understands that. We weren't near the other three, so I could safely use the force of my aura without harming them. The skill barely flinched. Ultimate skills, am I right? Before it responded by sapping some of my energy in an intentionally painful way. Do not risk harm to my master. Ow. 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 Quit that, will you? The great Veldora shall not be reduced to a whining baby by a skill. I needed an ultimate skill of my own, that much was obvious. As far as this one is concerned, the Veldora is not great. Veldora Tempest is a slacker, who has yet to gain an ultimate skill. This leads to my master needing to concern himself with Veldora's safety. The skill made a good argument, and really just made me feel worse about it. It's not that easy though. It's not like I could just bundle up some energy around Investigator and make it evolve into an ultimate skill. Not that I'd tried that yet. Perhaps I could try it, just this once. I was somewhat curious to see what would happen. I gathered up around 1/16 of my energy and pushed it around Investigator, while at the same time trying to invoke true dragon magic. What I really wanted was to be in control of the situation I was in, and my fate. If Rimuru is really so worried about me like Raphael says, I had to change that. I had to make sure nothing could happen to me that I didn't want to happen. Notice, individual Veldora Tempest had acquired the ultimate skill Faust, Lord of Investigation. Was it that easy this whole time? I felt like an idiot for just a moment, before I assured myself that I was just so great that I didn't need an ultimate skill until that very moment. Raphael, are you satisfied? I used my skill immediately. I had control over probability. I knew it innately. This power was mine, it was what defined me. Chance. Not because you wish me to be. Your powers have no effect on me, Veldora. Raphael just had to take the wind out of my sails. Nevertheless, we will commence with training. Simply acquiring an ultimate skill is insufficient. Ready yourself. I really didn't even know how to start thinking about everything that had transpired in just the last few days. Now I was suddenly in a way more formal role, actually being the proper ruler of the Jura Forest, not just some glorified janitor. That being said, I didn't mind being the glorified janitor when it brought me some good eats, especially with my current problem. I'd spent all night with gentle thought acceleration. I was trying not to overdo it so I could let my mind rest, speaking with Raphael. We talked about dozens of ways for me to get stronger. 2 came up as the most effective. The first was evolution, but really that wasn't happening again after the Harvest Festival. I was so far away from being able to do that it could be considered a pipe dream. There was just no way to recreate what the Harvest Festival did, at least not without somehow becoming something like a true dragon. Like that was ever gonna happen. So that left me with old reliable, what I'd been doing every time I needed a power boost: eat the strongest thing I can find, at least that is okay to eat. I'd not eaten some of the pretty powerful things I'd found so far. That was mostly for practicality's sake, though. If I could've, I'm sure I would've. There was only one problem with old reliable, and that's that the list of things strong enough to give me any power at all was slimming down pretty significantly, at least if I didn't want to run around farming rats like an RPG protagonist. That wasn't something I was above, but also not exactly for either. It was fun when I was younger, but was in the wheelhouse of something I'd promised not to waste my time on in this life. So instead I needed to carefully pick and order my eats to get the most out of them. Raphael had explained that I'd get more out of them if I spaced them out and ate them in an ascending order, that way I maximized the magicools I got from them. That's the exact kind of puzzle game I could brain my drain on. Rimuru. I have exactly the thing you're looking for in mind. Veldora suddenly shook me out of the stupor I'd been in, and caused my vision to get all shaky. The magical force of his voice was a bit much, even for a demon lord like me. Keep it down, will ya? I'm not trying to die again over here. Not again, at least. I watched that memory back. What you did was very courageous. Yet it was also stupid. You walked straight into that knife with your fragile human body. Veldora laughed loudly. Thanks, I guess I hadn't thought about it that way. Real insightful, big guy. I made sure he got a good feeling of my amount of sarcasm, lacing the insincerity into every drop of my aura. Well. Maybe that was, somewhat, perhaps, unsportsmanlike. Now, the monsters for your main course. There are some pesky dragons that live in the mountains above those short earth folks. Your holy scriptures call them dwarves, but I am not sure what they are called here. I was dumbfounded for a moment. I think people call them dwarves here too, buddy. Not sure how you hadn't noticed. Well, all small people look the same to me. Veldora gave me another shockingly insightful statement. Really, it was no wonder his sisters had left him in this hole in the ground for a whopping 3 centuries. Maybe I would have too. I get the feeling you are thinking something very rude. Veldora began to laugh. Regardless, those pesky dragons have been tarnishing my good name ever since I got sealed. I heard some of them were even claiming to be stronger than me. You aren't sending me after your sisters, are you? 'Cause I don't want anything to do with them after what you told me. What? No. My sisters are nothing like these dirty mutts. Those dragons up there are the spawn of some horrific thing that came in the afterbirth of one of my brother's creations dying. How is a death and afterbirth exactly? Trust me, you don't want to know. Veldora sounded oddly sassy saying that. I'd made my decision, though. So you just want me to clean up some scraps from your big brother's failed project? You could say it like that, yes. Veldora became very thoughtful, and began to think of something else, before carefully mentioning something else. Just be careful, some of them are as strong as demon lords, I hear. I know you don't want me helping you. I know, Veldora. I'll be all right. I had to make that promise. Veldora was the only person I still had. I left immediately, flying in the direction of Dworgen. I wondered for a moment if Dworgen's open to all races policy applied to demon lords or not. I doubted it did. I wasn't heading there to visit the city though, just the nearby mountains that house those dragons. I wouldn't bother the dwarves today. As I was flying, though, I just couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched by someone. Someone familiar too. Melim, but at the same time, she wasn't anywhere nearby. With how she just lets her aura go wild at all times, there was no way she was. I would have been able to tell. But I knew how it felt to be watched by her specifically, after all those training sessions that involved me running away and hiding from her just to survive. To be honest, I didn't want to see her. She had set me up, and I nearly died because of it. I didn't think that had been what she wanted, but it still happened. Was she watching while that whole disaster went down? When I was used to kill 1,000,000 people. I didn't want to think about it. But, just as I was refocusing on the snack I was about to enjoy, something else grabbed and held my attention like a vice. It was powerful and completely different from the presence of anything that I'd ever felt. The closest comparison I could make was Midray, which wasn't exactly reassuring considering that dude beat the crap out of me. Investigating who and what this was exactly seemed necessary, even if I was a bit reluctant to do so. It was just too much to ignore completely. Don't you hate it when people just start screaming at you on your daily walk? That horrific monster was approaching my kingdom at high speed, Rimuru Tempest. The newly crowned demon lord of the Jura forest, previously referred to as its guardian. So eerily similar to Veldora, the storm dragon. His aura wasn't quite identical, but shockingly similar. I could barely stand the dreadful feeling crawling up my back because of it, even from all this distance away. He was not in a good mood. This was different from the last time this monster posed a threat to my country. That had seemed to be from carelessness or indifference, not maliciousness, but now, I could feel that the demon lord was driven by some unknown motive, and that motive was bringing him right to our doorstep. I know what is happening. I explained. I'd felt his approach. The monster never seemed to restrain its aura even an ounce. Henrietta looked unnerved, and I could feel she thought herself useless at that moment. Do you believe he moves with aggression? My instincts were screaming yes as an answer to that, but my logic won over. I couldn't assume hostility until I could lay my own eyes on the demon lord. I cannot be sure. I spoke it just above whisper, before turning to my second. Vaughn, assemble our forces and take defensive measures, I commanded, standing up from my seat. Nobody else in Dworgen could stand a chance against such a beast. I'm the only one capable of fending Demon Lord Rimuru off if he's intent on attacking. King Gazel, you don't intend on. This is a major threat to the safety of my country and its people. As their king, I must take action. Assorted protests came from my closest advisors, but I ignored them, already intent on my planned course of action. They all understood what they needed to do, and I understood the same. I shall face the Demon Lord in the art of the sword and put a stop to this threat before it ever reaches the gates of Dworgen. Out in the middle of the open field outside of Dworgen, I stood alone. All those that were waiting to enter had been evacuated to the inside of the gates, safe from the terror that is the demon lord Rimuru. It was only as he flew high over the canopy of the forest that I realized where he was. His aura was so large that it was difficult to spot his exact position, but my sight was just sharp enough to make out the shining blue blur from the skyline. I released my aura in an even more flashy way, making it certain that the demon lord knew exactly where I was, and that I desired an audience. This was when, moving at incredible speed, the demon lord fell from the sky and landed gracefully right in front of me as if he were light as a feather, despite moving at speeds that would have shattered the very air he was flitting through. I kept my calm and continued to release my champion's hockey as my own show of strength in opposition to the demon lord's own aura. Quizzically staring up into my eyes while maintaining an outwardly calm demeanor, demon lord Rimuru took a somewhat relaxed position. It was also disturbingly incongruous with his presence and nature. He looked small, harmless, innocent. Some could even mistake him for a young human girl at a glance. But I knew that was not true, not in the least. This monster had slaughtered a large part of Rura's population all on his own. He was far from human. At Rimuru's hip rested a sword, one he made no motion to draw. He was far too calm, even if I don't doubt that he could wield it in the blink of an eye. What do you want, old man? I have things to do, places to be. Either spit it out or get out of my way. Rimuru flatly said, not changing his unamused expression at all. I could almost feel how he'd been willing to kill so many, if he could regard me so dismissively. Casual disrespect was just to be expected from a demon lord, and of course, one this brutal. I pulled all of my courage into my next words. I must judge your intentions, demon lord Rimuru. My country stands behind me, and if you plan on attacking my people, I cannot allow it. Rimuru lets out a tired sigh at my statement. I don't plan on attacking your country, which I assume is Dworgen. I just sent some strong monsters on those mountains up there and wanted to, eat them. Rimuru stated in an extremely casual manner, his voice reduced to a whisper when he shared that last disturbing detail. My mind lagged hearing Demon Lord's intentions, wondering if I heard him incorrectly just then. But, I quickly decided that I'd not. So he intends on fighting and eating the Dragon Lords nesting at the top of the Knots. It wasn't even an idea that had crossed my mind when considering this Demon Lord's intentions for rushing in the direction of Dworgen. Yet it made sense, I knew monsters only grew from fighting and killing. This demon lord is an extreme example of that. Yet to specifically wish to devour your enemies. That part threw me, and I lost decorum. I see. I took just a moment to breathe in deeply. Unfortunately, I cannot let you eat the dragon lords. They act as a barrier against the Eastern Empire, and I'm sure your lands would be the very next target after mine. I tried to reason with him. Rimuru frowned in a bored, almost childish way, and there was a tense silence before he elaborated. They are exactly why I want to get stronger, old men, and they're the best meal nearby. I tried to construct a response, but then, I saw his eyes dart to the side, glancing at the space behind me, and back to me again, the sharpness of them increasing. He's about to try to run past me. I swiftly took a battle stance with my sword, readying myself to stop the demon lord from passing, but he never made the motion to do so. You know what? I changed my mind, if you're so intent on standing in my way. Maybe you do. The demon lord's words sent a shiver down my spine. Rimuru gently moved, drawing his sword and matching my stance with one of his own. I'm guessing you want to fight. With his earlier threat, it was difficult to respond, but I was able to breathlessly muster something. Yes, I wish to face you in battle, Demon Lord Rimuru. The demon lord nodded and stretched his neck, before his eyes lit up. Before anything happens to you, I'd like to know your name since you already know mine. I am Gazel Dwargo, king of the armed nation of Dworgen. A king, huh? He looked me up and down appraisingly. Well, let's see if you can convince me you're not on the menu, all right. The casualness with which he said it was shocking, and I truly began to fear for my life. I stepped back, as I felt the sudden urge to avoid my own death. My instincts were correct, as the demon lord had drawn his sword in such a way that it would have left me headless, had I not moved in time. With that, Rimuru grinned, and the battle really began. To be honest, I felt toyed with the whole time. I simply was not fast enough, and even with thought acceleration fully engaged, the demon lord looked as if he was casually moving through exercises. This limited me to basic and effective techniques: parry, bind, cross, fall back. In a loop for a time, before Rimuru attempted to move to my flank on the regular, forcing me to retreat and bend. It seemed that of all these basic techniques, he knew every one. He would mirror my movements in an amateurish way, one that resembled my own younger years. Which was when I realized something, and I finally countered with an attack of my own, flash-stepping as if I would strike his chest, only to reveal that it was an illusion. I struck directly at the demon lord's head. My sword passed through his head with a sickening squelch, before the demon lord stepped back. The blue goo that spread from the cut quickly formed tentacles which pulled his torso back together, and I was left again with the young girl smiling serenely in front of me. So he truly is a slime. Demon Lord Rimuru's race was included in the announcement from the other demon lords, but it was so unbelievable that I found it hard to fathom. But it seemed to ring true, underneath that humanoid mask was a slime monster. Well, isn't that a dose of nostalgia? My other suspicion was proven correct, one that had been growing throughout our fight. There are hints of my style in yours, Demon Lord. I guess I noticed that too, Rimuru shrugged. Did you perhaps study under the legendary sword ogre? I asked him. It was a stretch, but the fact that this demon lord ruled over the same land where that man resides meant that there was a possibility that was the case. Rimuru's arms dropped, and a look of realization formed in his eyes. You mean the elder of the ogre village who's a master at swordplay? Rimuru asked with a clear respect for the man in his voice. Yes, that man. He was the one that showed me how to wield this blade when I was just a child. He taught me as well, but just the basics, Rimuru explained as he sheathed his sword, clearly done with the fight. So he did learn from my master. What an odd turn of events. With a slightly sad look, Rimuru continued. I honestly wish I could have learned more from him, but... His words seemed to have caught in his throat, stopping his explanation. I guessed from his reaction that my master was no longer with us. So he has died. Yes. Before I could do anything, the ogre village was destroyed by the orc lord's army, and he was one of the victims. I was convinced that stubborn old man was incapable of dying with how brutally he trained me back in the day. Rimuru showed a wry grin at this. Hey, yeah, he sure had a mean streak when it came to training. Even though this conversation has taken a more friendly turn, and Rimuru seemed to have lost interest, I needed to verify that he did not still intend on eating the dragon lords, or eating me. I stood up straighter again and addressed the notably less hostile-seeming demon lord in front of me. Do you still hold the same intentions as before? With the dragon lords? Yes, I need to get stronger. I like you though, so. Could we make some kind of deal instead? I felt myself chill slightly, hoping that deal would not involve his earlier threats. I haven't had good food in a long time. I heard Dworgen gets stuff from all over the world, so I want you to show me around, and give me some food from time to time. In exchange, I'll offer your kingdom my own protection. I was tempted to say no, immediately. Yet. This demon lord could be a powerful ally if I played my cards right. I don't think that will be possible. Oh. I had the perfect scheme in mind already. I mean, that sword won't be able to handle any more encounters like this without shattering. What? What are you talking about? I smiled broadly at the slime creature in front of me. Well, surely if you're going to be visiting, then we should duel like this from time to time, no? As students under the same master. The slime smiled and then looked seriously at the sword at his hip. This sword is special to me. If you're right, any more swordplay and I'll lose it, I can't risk that. I grinned, knowing I'd hooked him. As your senior pupil of the late sword ogre, perhaps I could have a new blade made for you. Rimuru's eyebrows raised slightly. Just because we had the same teacher. That can't be your only reason. I couldn't be dishonest enough to mislead him, that would end poorly. Then I'll be honest, I want to get on your good side so that, as neighbors, we can coexist without any more conflict. Rimuru nodded softly. Thought so. Well, I won't turn down a gift if that's all you want from me. As I said before, I have no reason to attack your kingdom. I just want those dragons, honestly I'd even like to have a look around. That was more dangerous, but winning the game comes with risks at times. Wonderful. I can even give you a tour of my glorious kingdom. You personally want to give me a tour? I needed to make the rules here clear, and the biggest issue with Rimuru had always come down to one thing. Yes, but before I can bring you past the gates, I will need you to restrain that aura. People will end up dying otherwise. Restrain it? Rimuru questions, sounding confused. But. His eyes widened slightly in surprise before he turned his face away from me and folded his arms. Rimuru let out a small huff, and within seconds, his aura disappeared completely, making him nigh indistinguishable from a human. Will this do? Rimuru turned back and asked me with a small, noticeable blush on his cheeks. I nodded yes. It almost seemed as if Demon Lord Rimuru was a bit embarrassed just now, but, for the sake of diplomacy, I didn't say anything more. My top advisors had been monitoring all of what happened using a crystal ball, and I was certain they were aware of what my plan was. I could almost hear them screaming at me for bringing a demon lord inside Dworgen, but didn't do this to be reckless. This may have been my only chance to speak with him face to face, without hostility, in other words, my only chance to gain his favor and turn his fangs away from Dworgen before he really did decide to attack my country. I was not foolish enough to try and control something as powerful and dangerous as a demon lord, but I'd grasped his nature and personality enough to tell that, with the right actions on my end, he could be quite agreeable. Maybe even passive, surprisingly enough. Unexpectedly, he wasn't just an irrational, unmanageable beast without reason, but a monster bearing some surprisingly human-like qualities. The demon lord Rimuru is definitely still twisted in some ways, but not as much as I thought upon hearing about his actions against Inglesia. I required an update on our shared project. Unfortunately Malim had not been entirely upfront about all the baggage the new pawn came with, and I was not paid enough to deal with it. Really, I hadn't been paid since Veldanava died. Man, I haven't had a good fight in a long time. I wonder if Rudra still has enough kick in him for a quickie. I had to wonder how Feldway was doing, that bastard was always upset that I was chosen as mediator of the world instead of him. Just goes to show that angels suck, and there's nothing better than what the world cooks up when left to its own devices. Even if Veldanava spent such a long time crafting them, they really just can't do a thing. They were never gonna be fit to run the world. Back on topic, I'd let my mind wander too far. I looked back at the Dragonoid in front of me. Malim. I nodded to her in a sly way, making sure she understood I was not entirely happy. She knew the expression well, after all this time, even if she always played dumb. She was a lot smarter than anyone gave her credit for, even herself. But she was such a hardess about it, it was seriously hard to even get her to admit it. Guy. How do you do? Oddly enough, in that moment she put on a very formal front, and I had a feeling she'd been spending too much time with Luminous. Probably just raiding her pantries. Well, I am doing smashingly, Malim. I haven't had even a moment's break thinking about that little newbie of ours. That was not a compliment. Oh, really? What you been thinking about, uncle? She teased me without a second thought. She'd called me that off and on for the last 1,000 years. Only in private though, she was aware of the tension between Velzard and I. She also knew I couldn't complain to Velzard about it, because it would get me killed. Well. For one, he's more than I bargained for. To be honest, he's a bit too powerful. He's very close to. Well, to be honest, Veldora in his younger years. I didn't like the idea of that, especially because the slime was named by that dragon. To me it was almost like he was a reincarnation of him, even if I knew that wasn't true. Velzard would have noticed. Veldora must have done something stupid again, that was my only guess. So, spill it. What did you do? Melim must have too. Those two would always be troublemakers. Well. Now that you mention it, I did some training with Rimuru. You know. Like beating him up and stuff. The stuff you said. Dad did with you, right? That didn't seem right, she'd have had to do more than that. Especially because I knew Rimuru would not gain the same way from combat that I do. He does not have a pride-based skill. I'd have noticed. Well, sure. That's fine, but it wouldn't cause this. Wah. Well, maybe Rimuru's just been eating a lot of stuff, huh? He's a slime, and they get stronger the more they eat. Melim was hiding something, that answer was just too evasive. I closed my eyes and considered what she said regardless, though. It was an interesting idea. If you took the skills of a simple slime, and took them to the extreme, well, you would get one hell of a monster. Nothing that too dissimilar from an orc lord though. And those were a Sunday special, so really nothing too eventful. Rimuru himself even encountered one to my knowledge, him and one of those fleas existing at the same time was a funny coincidence. Rimuru ate the orc lord, right? I'd been thinking about it, and one of the sin skills would fit this, at least assuming whatever Rimuru had and whatever the orc lord had were compatible. Yaha, that's what made me want to see him. Melim smiled broadly, as if she was talking about a prized pet. Well, then he must have gained starved, it's a sin derivative. If he already had another derivative of gluttony, then that means. I frowned deeply. Rimuru can get the skills of those he can devour, can't he? Wah. Well. I don't know about that. Plunder skills aren't that common. I mean, you're one in, like, a bajillion, guy. She was lying, and trying to be overly flattering. I really needed to teach her how to lie better, or at least lie to me better. It'd come in handy for her someday. They aren't that rare, that new pet of Lumina's has one, right? Even if it's a bad one. If I'd remembered properly, Velzard had called it usurper, and explained it required her to defeat a more powerful opponent. Which to me sounded ludicrous, as a condition to actually plunder a skill. Especially when all I needed was to see it. We both know that Rimuru has an ultimate skill, right? Well. I can't deny that. Melim sighed deeply then put on a pout. You're so mean, guy. I grinned, maybe I'd gotten what I wanted in my overbargain. Rimuru must have the Lord of Gluttony. Isn't it cheating to try and figure out what skill someone has before you fight them? Excuse me, but that's not what the Lord of Gluttony normally does. It's just supposed to sap energy, both of us know that. But he's made it a plunder skill as well. Honestly, the fact he'd made a superior version of the sin gave me ideas for my own pride, perhaps there was hidden potential I hadn't realized yet. Sure. I guess I can say, he has Lord of Gluttony, but that's all you're getting from me, big guy. Har har. Now, that must be one hell of an ultimate skill, because to me, it almost felt like two. It must just be one very strong one though, right? The logic would track if it could plunder energy and skills. MHM. Melim smiled in this adorably prideful way, and unfortunately, this time I couldn't tell if she was lying. The threat was seemingly neutralized despite said threat strolling right beside me. A nagging voice in the back of my head was calling me mad for personally leading a demon lord past the formidable gates of my kingdom, but this opportunity was too valuable for me to heed its warning. I suppose I was also acting on my gut feeling too, that this demon lord held no malice toward me. Even when he was hinting at the idea of eating me, there was no sense of intent to kill. Just a dangling warning not to get in his way, a looming potential threat rather than an inevitable one. And now there was just a silent, calm, almost distant feeling to Demon Lord Rimuru's demeanor as we walked together. We passed through the gates and the guards manning it, when suddenly, Rimuru stopped. I looked back at him and found him staring down one of my guard captains, and surprisingly, the captain was staring back at him. Long time no see, Kaido. Rimuru smiled and waved amiably at the men, causing him to jump slightly, startled. Muttering to himself, Captain Kaido waved back much less enthusiastically, seeming more stunned and confused than anything. Rimuru left it at that and closed the distance that had formed between us. I waited until we were out of earshot of the guards to question the interaction he just had. You know him. We met once or twice, Rimuru answered casually. Mind telling me how you entered my city, then? Through the gate. He looked almost jovial. Maybe Fancyman over here prefers secret tunnels or something, but I don't know about M. Rimuru knew about the tunnels, I'd bet my royal jewels on it. I pinched the bridge of my nose, feeling a headache coming on. This was going to be a long day. At least I no longer needed to worry about revealing the existence of the secret royal passages, if this observant demon lord was already aware of them. So I led him straight to one, the many tunnels whose existence is known to very few. A royal family secret, only known to me and some of my closest advisors, thought their true extent was known only to I. Rimuru grinned as I opened the passage with a complex combination of rune activations, seemingly pleased with himself. I should have known dwarves would dig tunnels like this, he snickered. I decided to humor him. Just like slimes will eat anything you give them. Rimuru frowned at that. I won't just eat anything, okay? I have standards. I've even been called a connoisseur. I laughed loudly. By whom? A goblin? Nope. A very obnoxious human. I knew that tone, that expression. It was not dissimilar to the ones I had to hold back from showing when interacting with those that thought much too highly of themselves. Nobles don't have good taste either. What would you know? I bet you'd find a good chunk of granite appetizing. I almost lost my breath at that. This was the best exchange I'd had in years. At least I've never eaten any spiders. Hey. That was in self-defense. I could sense that was not entirely true, even though I hadn't even attempted to read his surface thoughts. I was certain he would notice if I did. We all have our exoskeletons in the closet. I did want to make the mood lighter. You know, I'm kinda surprised you have a sense of humor. I always imagined kings as stuck-up, all serious, no-nonsense kind of guys. Either that, or the corrupt selfish kind that are only in that line of work for the luxury it comes with. Whatever gave you that idea? Rimuru just shrugged. Manga. That was the answer to his question, but I wasn't about to admit that my assumptions about what a king was like were based almost purely on fictional characters. I should have known that Gazel was a decent guy, with what I'd seen of Dworgen before meeting him. Just the fact that he allowed some monsters into his country was already a positive mark for him in my book. But still, I didn't want to reveal my inexperience in this world to Gazel. I barely knew him, and I didn't exactly have a good track record when it came to picking people to put my trust in so far. Best to be a little cautious here. I wasn't so paranoid that I expected this whole visit to be a trap to kill or enslave me or whatever, but keeping my guard up just a bit was still a necessity. An example of a reason to keep my guard up, this tunnel was rigged with explosives. Small, runic magic enchanted devices, embedded behind the walls, completely hidden from normal sight. I just had to assume the man standing next to me had the detonator. Tucked away somewhere, probably ready to pull out and activate on any would-be pursuers. Gazel is a good man, but that didn't mean he had no heart to kill. Something about that fine line had really evaded me recently. So, how's ruling a country? I was curious, even if I didn't really know how to properly ask that kind of question. Not that it's, you know, an easy question to answer. Sorry about that. You could say it is the challenge and work of my life. One I didn't have a choice in, but I still. Well, it's something I find pride in my own way. The men became distant and silent at that, and I knew I'd hit something personal. So I let the conversation hang, and waited to get to the palace. The rest of the walk was a little awkward, but we did end up in a beautiful courtyard, lined in bronze statues of what looked like powerful earth spirits, and a few dwarves. In the middle was a fountain with a large boulder sitting in the center. That was probably the weirdest sight. Dwarven decor wasn't mine to judge. I'd not really used any of my contracting skills in this world. So, this is your palace? A small part of it. Gazel led me to a large cast iron door, and knocked in an oddly specific way. Soon enough, a dirty blonde guy with gruff stubble opened the door, looking very done with his life. King Gazel, I see you've brought the Demon Lord. It made me wonder who else knew I was making this visit, since I got the impression that Gazel would want to keep it a secret. Dwarf, I see you're coping with this. Gazel laughed loudly, in an attempt to break the tension. Dwarves like us should never let the mood sour. Should I take you out for a drink later? Someone named a dwarf? No, wait, it's the other way around. After thinking that, it was awkward to look at the guy. Really, I guessed he was decent if he was as close as Gazel was implying, looking past the Sesame Street mustache. Sir, I worry this isn't the best idea. That was all he said before moving aside and opening the door, allowing Gazel and I to pass. I ended up finding myself trailing the pair, and Gazel was quick to holler back. Keep up, otherwise I'll think our little match actually exhausted you. I could have killed that old man, right, Raphael? It would be a simple matter. My skill had my back here. Gazel was being a bit offensive, especially with how casually he said it. Then again, it really was hard to say I was mad about what he said. He was just too cheerful and joking. I can't let that one slide, Dwarf King. I walked inside with the small jab at the two of them hanging. That's when an old lady rounded the corner and stared sharply at us in the blink of an eye. There you troublemakers are. Maybe if at least one of you hadn't run off, I'd not have had to use these creaky old knees getting down here. I wasn't sure who this old lady was, but her presence was a little bit off-putting. It didn't make a whole lot of sense for the first line of defense against a demon lord to include the elderly. I thought I'd ordered an evacuation on the royal wing. Yet here you are, you old granny. I couldn't figure out if Gazel was using this as a tactic or something, trying to control me with a mature lady. Well, in this case a very mature lady. I couldn't let a whippersnapper like this go without getting my scrutiny. I've seen all the demon lords yet, so I wanted to make sure I got eyes on the whole collection. I could tell she was trying to analyze me, and not even trying to hide it. And I thought Gazel was bold. This granny was 1,000 times worse. Maybe she actually was his grandma. So, who's this, beauty? Oh ho ho. It's been a few decades since I've been called that. But you could have just asked, I am Jane. She did not elaborate, she seemed to think her name would speak for itself. Jane is my court archmage, and perhaps the oldest thing in Dworgen, Gazel explained in her place. I thought I'd raised you better, she scolded him. Your granddad wouldn't be happy to hear that from you, young'un. It was part way through this scuffle that I'd noticed the dwarf named Dorf had managed to escape my detection, and he was long gone. He must have known this kind of exchange was gonna happen. Personally, I felt like I was sitting at the dinner table with a family I didn't know. I only meant to say that you have been around longer than Dworgen itself. Gazel was grinning slyly, it seemed like he'd been trying hard to get a word in and was happy to get one over the crone. Even if he was clearly fond of her. Now, let this slime creature do the talking. That's why you brought it here, right? I have a name too. One I actually know. She smiled back at me. I heard you came to Dworgen to eat some dragons. Why? If you know that much, then you probably were listening in on my answer to that question too. Well, I couldn't hear you talking, Gazel here just has some special skills. Some kind of thought communication, maybe. It made sense for a king, especially with his closest advisors. If you don't want to answer, I suppose Gazel and I will just need to have a chat. You have a good afternoon now, Demon Lord Rimuru. These old bones need a warm bath. After that, she walked right past us down the hall. Such a weird old lady. I brought Demon Lord Rimuru to a balcony I found to be a particularly pleasant meeting spot, and sat down across from him. I had one of my servants called in to bring us both some tea and tried my best to relax a little in this monster's presence. Rimuru had been oddly endearing with Jane, as I'd seen him during our whole meeting. It was difficult to believe this was the same creature that had destroyed Rura, yet I knew it to be true. It felt exactly the same as the faint aura I'd felt, even here in Dworgen, on that fateful day. I still wondered how the Western Council would reorganize. You can see the whole palace from here, Rimuru. I told him, truthfully. Rimuru looked out upon my grounds, and my city. There was a spark of recognition, and I hoped he'd pick up some small thing to talk about. Then his eyes set on something. I followed his gaze, and found him staring at a group of children, training in the yard of my royal academy. Perhaps 2 miles away, but Rimuru's gaze was still entranced. In the faint aura the slime was still releasing, I could feel a dark turn. Almost enraged, yet subdued. Regretful would be the best way to put it. I was hoping to impress him with the sight, not upset him. I felt some small chill at my mistake. Rimuru, tell me. What is clouding your mind? The best course would be to lean in, and hope I could offer some of my knowledge. Being of assistance would prove my genuine spirit to this one, I knew it. I'd already planned something just for it, in our time between the royal wing and this very balcony. Rimuru remained silent, seemingly lost for words for some time. You could say I lost many of those closest to me, all because I trusted someone too much. Picking those you can trust is something every leader must struggle with, and I suspect all powerful beings like ourselves struggle with it. I considered what to bridge that statement with, and I caught on something sagely enough. In all my years, I still find the best way is simply maintaining an air of caution, until you see what a person is willing to do for you and for themselves. I guess I just don't think about things that way. Rimuru with that air of naiveness, again. It worried me, I didn't want this one to get taken advantage of. It would be much too dangerous. You're young, yes. I thought I may as well ask. Huh. Well, I guess I'm gonna be turning too soon. Real soon, actually. The demon lord almost seemed to count on his fingers, for a few moments, before his expression went blank. Yeah, only 2 weeks, 3 days, 6 hours, and... Oh, sorry. I don't need to be that specific. What? I was unsure I'd heard it right, regardless of what he followed up with. Did I hear you correctly? Not 200. 2. 2 what? Years. Years, yeah. 2 years, 2 trips around the sun. 2 years. In 2 years this monster became strong enough to wipe out the capital of the West. It was astounding, terrifying, perhaps simply catastrophic. I hoped dearly he would never turn his powers on my people. Something else was off about what he said. I've not heard that expression from a monster before. Something from other worlders that I'd never understood. Did you spend much time around adventurers? Yeah, it's part of how I ended up in Rura, actually. The demon lord did not elaborate from there, and I felt it distasteful to ask. Well, if it is true that your birthday approaches, would it be alright if I had some other gift commissioned for you, along with the sword? I had something planned, but it was a good excuse. The slime looked at me suspiciously, before resigning himself. Sure, if you wanna, I guess. Can't hurt, right? I see it as a courtesy. You're a weird guy. On a different note, since we are speaking of gifts, I considered how to introduce Kaijin. It shouldn't be long before the blacksmith I summoned here arrives, then you can discuss having a new sword forged. Is this someone I can trust? I promise you that Kaijin is a man you can trust. I have known him for a long time and he is very talented and trustworthy. Rimuru paused for a moment, taking the time to sip his tea before responding. If I can trust him that much, maybe I should reveal who I am to him when we meet. Do you think this Kaijin can handle that? Do you mean? Rimuru looked away, and shrunk some. Well, we can't have him making a sword for me without knowing that, right? I nearly broke my other one. Can he handle that? Working for the disaster of Rura. So he has heard that nickname despite being so isolated. It made me wonder if he had recently made secret jaunts into other countries as well. I will inform him after he arrives. That works for me. After a few minutes of silent waiting, some cookies were brought in to be enjoyed with the tea, and for the first time since he got here, Rimuru was actually showing a pleasant interest in something. His eyes were locked onto the platter of cookies resting in the servant's hands and followed them closely as they set the plate down on the table between the two of us. As soon as the servant left, Rimuru grabbed one of the cookies and took a quick bite, his eyes lighting up with restrained excitement with the treat. So this demon lord has a sweet tooth, huh? I will have to keep that in mind. It's been a while since I've had something like this, Rimuru said, almost sounding like he was making excuses for his thrilled reaction to the cookies. I just chuckled and took a cookie for myself. We both continued enjoying the cookies and tea, up until we heard a knock at the door. Then, in stepped the men we both had been waiting for. I have come as you requested, my king, Kaijin said, sweaty and sounding out of breath from rushing here so quickly. I'd made it an urgent summons, so it's no wonder that he seemed so out of sorts right then. I was certain he came here as fast as possible to meet my demand. Hello, Kaijin, please take a seat. I gestured to the third chair here, placed between Rimuru and me on the other side of the table. Kaijin looked at Rimuru with a confused expression for a moment, but obeyed my order and sat in the designated chair. How have you been? I asked the man. I've been well, King Gazel. That's good to hear. Oh, and I must inquire how those three brothers have been doing as well. I heard about what happened to those talented artisans a while back, but how are they now? They still suffer from their crippling injuries, my liege, but that does not stop them from enjoying their lives as much as they can nowadays. It's still unfortunate that none of them can work, though, with their level of skill and natural talent. I see. Well, I'm sorry to hear that they are still struggling. As much as I'd like to hear more, Kaijin, we have important measures to address. This is a special guest of mine, and I would like you to make them a new sword. Let me make the introductions. I gave the man a serious glance as if to tell him to brace himself, and hoped he understood. This is Kaijin, a highly talented artisan of the blacksmithing trade and a former officer of Dworgen's military. Kaijin, this is Rimuru. Demon Lord Rimuru. Kaijin gulped as he looked at Rimuru with a whole new level of anxiety. His already sweaty face was becoming sweatier as he realized who it was he was sitting so close to. It is a pleasure to meet you, Demon Lord Rimuru. Kaijin forced out with a strained, yet polite smile. Nice to meet you too, Kaijin. I'm hoping you can make me something really special after hearing Gazel here talk up your skills. Rimuru replied with a wide, bordering on sinister grin. A sword, you say? Well, please tell me what exactly you are looking for, Demon Lord Rimuru, and I'll try my best to craft it. What I'm looking for is durability over anything. I don't want it nearly breaking on me like my last one. Something simple is fine as long as it can handle my strength without getting damaged. A straight sword, perhaps. Kaijin nodded and looked down as if trying to picture what it was that Rimuru wanted him to smith, muttering quietly to himself about the specifications and details. Oh, and I want you to make it out of this. Rimuru declared. He reached into his coat and pulled something out. Rimuru set a large chunk of shiny iridescent metal on the table. Is that? No, there's no way. What's wrong? Can't you make me a sword using this stuff? Rimuru asked innocently. You want me to forge you a sword, made completely out of magi steel? The disbelief was clear in his tone and expression, and I can't say I was not almost as shocked. Nobody makes weapons out of pure magi steel. It was too excessively expensive, but sitting here in front of us was probably enough material to do exactly that. I'd never expected Demon Lord Rimuru to pull something so priceless out of his pocket like it was nothing. Where did he even get something like this? And he doesn't even seem to know how valuable it is. I internally shook my head at the crazy display, but I continued to sit back and watch the negotiations between the two. That's what I just said, wasn't it? You can make it happen, right? I've never. I can't say for certain that I can since I've never attempted such a crazy project, but I think I can manage it. Wonderful. If you do the job properly, I don't mind providing something special as payment for your services. I held my hand up to stop him. Wait a moment, I will cover the costs. This is a gift that I offered you so payment from you isn't needed. No, I need to make sure he does his best at this. Now, Kaijin, if I'm impressed by your work, I'll heal the injuries of those friends of yours. But they were hurt close to a year ago. That doesn't matter. One of them is missing an arm and that also doesn't matter. I'll restore their bodies to perfect condition, all you need to do is make me the perfect sword, doesn't that sound fair? Yes. Yes, I will do it. Very good, very good. Now, take this magi steel and make me the best sword you've ever forged. Rimuru pushed the magi steel closer to Kaijin before he leaned back in his chair, satisfied with himself. You are dismissed now, Kaijin. Don't keep the Demon Lord waiting any longer than needed. Of course, King Gazel. Kaijin all but stumbled out of the room, looking stunned by the conversation he just had, and I didn't blame him. I looked back at Rimuru who was still sitting in that overly relaxed position. You seem like you were struggling with that mundane interaction. I think I'm just a little rusty. Rimuru gave some insistence there, but I could sense his own doubt. Unfortunately the faint aura he had gave him away. So, about that tour. It was a subject change I was willing to let him get away with. Ah yes, a tour. I have some things I'd be happy for you to see. I decided to go boisterous here, he needed some levity. Rimuru donned a cloak, before muttering. All disguised up. Ah. Not many know your face, it'll do. I pulled out my own disguise amulet, it had been brought with me, in case I returned to my lands worse for wear. The people could not see such a thing. I activated the magic, wrapping me in its illusion. Rimuru stared at me for a moment. Well, I guess you have me beat when it comes to a disguise. You must do this often. Only when I find it necessary. Maybe I should try a little harder. And just like that, Rimuru's hair color changed to medium brown and his eyes to dull green. Of course. He is already manipulating his true form to look human, changing the colors of it would be simple. This Gazel guy sure was a bragger when you let him start talking about himself and his country. I was dragged around for about an hour, shown the sights, the odds, the ends. I was especially shown the restaurants, and I thought of it as some vain attempt to get me attached to some of the places in Dworgen. By the end of it, I was more than happy to go back to my secluded cave in Jura. I wanted to be alone, and it was odd. People had started to overwhelm me, and I attributed it to both all the time I spent alone, and my power. I feel like everyone is trying to take advantage of me, even today. It was when we got back to the gate that I ran into an old friend, our good guard captain, Kaido. I waved him over as soon as I caught sight of him, and hoped he'd be willing to talk at least for a little while. I could handle just one more person today. Kaido. Ah, so it really is you, Rimuru. I was curious if that little thing I saw was really walking into Dworgen alongside our king. Kaido smiled. It's good to see you staying out of trouble. How's the monster life been treating you? Staying out of trouble had to be the strangest thing I'd heard in weeks. What were Kaido's standards for trouble? I was starting to get why he let me off so easy before. Should such a permissive guy really be a guard captain? Well, I have my complaints, but it is what it is, not like it's been my choice. I smiled darkly. I really wish he hadn't asked. Well, being what you are is rough. So I get it, no one else would ever trust you, right? Kaido did seem to understand, and maybe that's why he was trying to cheer me up. It was hard to say anyone should trust me, I'd all but let myself be controlled. That's for sure. How do you look past it though? How can you be okay with it? I was real curious. Kaido was some kinda wise, sagely guy and I hadn't even realized. Kaido smiled at me, and gave me a thumbs up. Well, I know you Rimuru. You're a good kid, you know that. Don't matter what you are, your heart is made of sterner stuff. Man. He's such a good guy. Who cares if you're a monster, right? Ah. That's when Gazel interjected. How've you been, Captain Kaido? Oh. Your Majesty, I apologize if you feel ignored. Kaido immediately knelt on one knee. I've been busy, but I cannot complain. Me having more work just means Dworgen grows and gets more trade. That's very true, and in the name of Dworgen growing, your brother has been given a special assignment. Gazel smiled distantly. He will forge a great weapon, a sword of insurmountable durability. That's wonderful. I'm glad to hear he's getting the good jobs. Kaido put his fingers together. If you don't mind me asking, Your Majesty, who's it for? He was ablaze with curiosity. Well, of course. It's for the demon lord standing before you. Rimuru Tempest. Gazel at that, lost his smile. Meanwhile, Kaido nearly jumped. Huh. What do you mean? Demon lord. I felt almost shocked. You didn't know. It also made what he said prior hurt a little bit. Well. Rimuru, I didn't know all that. You're really the same Rimuru I locked up. Obviously. Don't you recognize me? Ah, you've grown a lot, I couldn't be sure. I thought maybe all talking slimes look like that. If there are any others. Kaido looked distant. It's nice to see you again. He didn't seem to want to say much more. I sighed. I'll be sure to bring you something nice from the forest, Kaido. Just to pay you back for all the trouble. Anything you need. Oh, that's all right. I'm a self-sufficient dwarf. Kaido began to inch away. Well, I'll think of something, don't worry about that. You have a good day now. Yes, both of you as well. After that he began to walk away, never letting his eyes leave me. I looked at the ground. I'd like to get out of here. I found myself doing a rather calming activity. I was doing a bit of landscaping at the edge of my mirror pool. I'd put up a nice tree, and rearranged its species. For one, I'd made it not need sunlight, instead it could directly feed off of magicules. I'd also modified it to look just like a cherry tree, although with some nice black leaves. The flowers would be beautiful, even if they weren't in bloom. Those would be a nice purple. I planted a few of them around the edge of the mirror pool, and put some nice-looking rocks, with a nice sprinkle of moss. Finally there was some very smooth white sand which I was having a very nice time raking into neat little patterns around all the decorations. I never thought I'd enjoy something like this. The mirror pool was full of slimes. They seemed to like it in there, and I had no reason to complain about that. I made sure to toss them some little rocks I filled with magicules as I was working. They were each cute little things, even if I think others would consider them simple mindless monsters. These slimes were the only thing that could survive down here, at least out of all the creatures in the cave. I spent some of my time working on those too. But I'll save that for later. You can all wait. Who the hell am I even talking to? I really did feel like I was starting to go insane. So I decided to talk to the person who lives in my head. Raphael, what do you think of my job on the trees? With your current abilities, it will only take you another century to perfect this maginization technique. Thanks. Well, maybe. That isn't fair. How long does it usually take? For an awakened demon lord it could take many centuries, if not millennia. Oh, so I'm above average, then. Of course. You know, partner. We should talk more like this. You are my only company, really. That would suit us. You don't ask questions a whole lot, you know. That's how conversations are driven. So maybe you should try it. Rimuru. You can talk to me, your ever-reliable big brother, at any time. Shut up, Veldora. I was having an intimate moment. I spent an entire week in my cave without speaking a single word to anyone, but that doesn't make me a shut-in, okay? Slimes don't even usually talk, so this was perfectly acceptable behavior. But just because I said nothing didn't mean nothing was said to me. It seemed like every damn day this dryad would be here asking me for something, but really I'm just one slime. I was beginning to feel like the forest was too much responsibility, and one I didn't want to deal with. We need to reinforce our borders. While you being a demon lord has created an air of danger in the forest once more, brave humans have still tried to encroach more than once. Yeah, I got it. She was saying that my threat to that one guy wasn't enough. I needed more than one rumor to scare the humans off, especially if I wanted them to actually stay away from my house. I understand. I finally gave her some sort of answer. She just stared at me for a long moment after I said that, like she was expecting more from me, but I didn't have anything else to give her. As long as it was just a few ragtag groups of humans, I planned on just letting nature take care of them. The Jura forest is a dangerous place, after all. Them getting cocky just because it was under new management now didn't change that fact. I knew she wouldn't leave if I didn't say something else. As long as I deal with the powerful ones that'll actually pose a problem, the rest should just sort themselves out. Trainee didn't seem to like that. Lord Rimuru. Didn't I tell you to stop calling me that? All that formality when mixed with her nagging just rubbed me the wrong way. Man, I would love to just make some powerful regional monsters to deal with this stuff for me. I had a feeling I'd be too tempted to eat them if I did though. The stuff in my cave was already tempting and I'd really just been screwing around. I wasn't making anything to deal with serious threats. Maybe moderation would help there. I just needed stuff that wasn't too tempting and also could deal with some of the adventurers I'd met if it came to that. Some of them were pretty strong, some could even hurt me. Like that demon hunter for my first job. What was his name? I really didn't remember anymore, even if he'd been a big help. He'd helped me find a great meal. I wondered how I could encourage more demons like that one to attack me. It would make finding food trivial. Man, I needed a drink. Rimuru Tempest, trainee got my attention again. Have you been paying attention? Sure, just let me grab a drink first. I want to be drunk for this. I think you've done that enough recently. Trainee was underestimating how much a grown man should drink, or a grown slime, I suppose. Even if I wasn't sure I was fully grown yet. You are, in fact, not fully grown. Not even close. That doesn't matter. There's no legal drinking age here anyway. And if there was one, I'd change it. Or make myself an exception. I really hadn't made more than one law, which was, don't disturb the peace of the forest. That was a pretty loose interpretation too. I wasn't gonna go around stopping monsters from fighting, it's what they do. So long as they don't exterminate each other. Every monster plays a crucial part in this little world of mine. Ignoring trainee's protests, I reached into my stomach for what I needed, but all that showed up in my hand was an empty bottle. Then I tried again. Same result. And again. Still another empty one. You have exhausted your supply of liquor. I've what? You have. I heard you the first time. There's no way that's true, though. I am not deceiving you. This can't be. I'm not some alcoholic grandpa. This was bad. It wasn't like I could just stroll into a store and buy more. My old arrangement was long dead by this point, considering how long it had been since I'd taken advantage of it. Also, Rura was kind of in ruins now, and the guy I was trading with was probably dead. Which was in no way my problem. Nope, nah, had nothing to do with me. Really. I was pretty sure Raphael could create literally perfect alcohol. Yet I had the feeling it wouldn't be the same, it would be too perfect. Alcohol isn't supposed to be perfect. It's supposed to sting and make you feel gross, that's when you know it'll be good. And on top of that, I wasn't convinced she would even do that in the first place. Lord Rimuru. Perhaps you should, leave the forest. Trainee was only saying that because my aura was causing rocks to fly around like I was a tiny hurricane. I still had a hard time controlling it when I was emotional. You don't get it. Being drunk is, oh. You told me to leave. I thought about it, there had to be a best place to get beer, and sake, and wine, and spirits. Somewhere they had plenty of whiskey. Only one place like that could exist in this world, a place where real alcoholic connoisseurs lived. Of course. The dwarfs. I mean dwarves. I was there too recently though. Gazel would make me agree to stay out for a whole month for a single bottle. And I'd probably take that deal too. I needed someone who traded with the dwarves. Who in the Jura forest does trade? The kobolds, Trainee answered after some hesitation. Do they trade with the dwarves? She told me I needed to be careful to contain my aura, otherwise they'd all die. I didn't want to accidentally erase a race today, so I'd made sure to be on my best behavior. Lord Rimuru. An entire crowd of meter-tall animal people in a miniature village were bowing in front of me, kinda reminded me of that game with the tanuki who racketeered your debt. Who told them to do all this anyway? I had just showed up with pretty much no notice. I had a feeling a certain tree lady told them I was coming, and all I went to do was grab an outfit from my house, and some tromping boots. The latter ended up being unnecessary since this place was a lot less rugged than I'd expected. So, who leads you little guys? I didn't intend to be offensive, but it felt too natural to ask the question that way. Even if I'd hate it if someone did that to me. An older-looking kobold stood up, wearing a fancy hat that seemed to indicate he was the boss, and a monocle that I could only guess was very expensive. I'd not seen too many people with glasses. He had a thin wiry goatee and looked somewhere between a hound and a corgi. I really wondered where all these western dog breeds came from, especially since this was another world. You'd assume all the oddities of dog breeds would look totally different, or I guess kobold breeds. Either way, quite a few of these monsters resembled specific breeds of dogs from my previous world. Me lord. He said simply, and just instantly became unsure if he could actually speak. Here why? That only made it worse. Well, I'm here to ask for some booze. You all trade with the dwarves, right? I wanted the good stuff, and that meant going right for the source. I'd take human liquors, but I wanted dwarven drink. Booze. Booze. The old kobold turned and walked to one of the tents, lifting a flap and revealing several entire kegs of something. Really wasn't sure what kind of booze. Booze. What you got there? I'm not picky, but I do want to know what I'll be drinking. Wine. Spirit. Whiskey. The old dog pointed at each stack of barrels while saying their contents. I wanted one of each, but I didn't want to destroy their business. They really only had 9 small kegs. Huh. Well, I'll take a keg of whiskey. And I'll come back for your spirits when I've finished that. I immediately pulled one of the barrels into my stomach. Coin. The old kobold looked back and held out a hand. Ah, yeah, how much? Coin. He said more assertively. Ah, okay then. I tossed him a small bag of gold coins, at which he grinned. After that I decided to get a better look at their little village. It was obviously nomadic, mostly tents. Anything here looked like it could be loaded onto a cart and moved. They'd even paved a handful of areas with cobble to make good camping grounds. That's when I noticed something off. Inside one of the fancier tents there was a sleeping human, and a pretty rotund one at that. I wondered how a flabby man like that had gotten all the way out here. Maybe he had some power under all that weight that simply went unnoticed. I'd like to have a look around, I announced. Wait. The kobold leader ran in front of me and spread his arms out to stop me. Nothing that way. Follow. Was he trying to hide the flabby old geezer from me? Why? I will in a second, I promised, gently pushing him aside. Ignoring the kobolds clamoring for me to stop or allow them to treat me or something, I, very conspicuously, made a beeline directly for that fancy tent. Making my way inside before any kobold could stop me. Pushing myself through the flaps, I walked right up to the men. Wait. The kobold leader, and a few others, rushed in after me. Quickly he started bowing, saying, "Mercy, mercy." No threat. Very sorry. Raphael. Why are they so concerned? You previously instructed them to ask permission before bringing humans into the forest. Oh. I did do that. They've totally been ignoring my orders. I was offended now. I exhaled through my nose and turned to the kobold leader. You didn't tell me, I said, a little peeved. Sorry. Mercy. The kobold leader dropped to the floor and started giving me a dejiza. No threat. Needs help. I repeated. And you're helping him? Yes. Mercy, please. The kobold begged earnestly, staring up at me with big, round, glistening puppy eyes. Ugh, I groaned, putting my face in one hand. Leave. They were reluctant, but the kobolds left the tent, casting worried glances back at the sleeping men. They seemed to really care about this human, but I needed to make sure these poor little guys weren't being taken advantage of. So, I started kicking him, gently, in his pudgy gut. Good form. What? I asked Raphael. This time you haven't been to his level. Sure. Thanks. HNG. The old man was grunting, but not waking up, so I finally jabbed with the toe of my boot, hard, into his side and rolled him onto his back. NNGH, wah. The man's flappy jowls grimaced as he finally opened his eyes, squinting. Hey. Who are you? I demanded. Huh. The old man was clearly drunk, probably passed out, and just stared at me in confusion. Who are you? I growled. Oh. I'm Jalmile. He answered, seemingly honestly. Why are you here? I stared down at him, resisting the urge to lean in. To my surprise, the old man's eyes immediately welled with tears. He pushed himself up, and started sputtering out drunken Scrabble before I could finally understand him. I've been banished. He sobbed, tears running freely down his face. Some sleazy noble came to me as a client, wanting to sell elves. Elves? Of all things. And when I told him I wanted nothing to do with that, he ruined me. What? I stared, memories of the elf elder's plea resurfacing. My stores have been burned down, he's murdered my employees. And then he has the nerve to slander my good name, bringing a court against me and everything. No, go back, I leaned in, my voice turning intense. Who wanted to sell elves? The old man sniffled. Viscount Kazak in Blumend used to be my base of operations, and now I'm doomed. Doomed to die, eaten by monsters in this god's forsaken forest. I might even be killed by that new demon lord. Choosing to ignore the bit about being potentially murdered by me, I crouched down next to him and started listening closely. Turns out Jalmile, which I couldn't bother pronouncing even in my head, was a merchant who had businesses all over the western nations. Molly took clients and helped grow their business, and this nobleman wanted him to finance a slave-staffed elven brothel and restaurant. Real messed up stuff. It also took me a bit to realize, but I recognized him. This was the man I'd made a deal with for booze as the spirit-stealing spirit. What were the odds? I had to return to Bloomin to appear in court, Molly sniveled, and while I was gone, Rura was destroyed. Wiped out. Most of my business was out of there. I lost all the assets I was using to pay a lawyer and the bodyguards. He was trying to assassinate me. Whoops. Ah, sorry man. I mean, I'd ruined plenty of lives. This guy was one of many, but it was frustrating that it was someone I knew. Even if just in passing. At least he's alive, I guess. Thinking about this created complicated feelings in me. It's not like I could take it back. Some people are just so evil. Molly wept. Really, how can someone be like that? I know, right? I blurted out. I pulled some glasses of whiskey from the keg I just bought in my stomach, handing one over. Just a few months ago this guy I thought was my friend betrayed me. He used magic to control me and make me do horrible things, people died. And now everyone thinks I'm some sort of monster and it's ruined my life. Why do bad things happen to good people? Molly whined. I made sure he got what was coming, I said grimly. And I'm going to do the same for anyone like him I find. He kidnapped my kids. My kids. And now I've got to run all over creation to look for him, and I'm not even sure where to start. Kidnapped. That's terrible. Molly gasped. Yes. I ceded, downing another glass of whiskey in a single go as I refilled Molly's. I don't remember much of what happened after that. We talked a lot, I know that, and maybe there was crying. Not from me, of course, monsters don't cry, and demon lords definitely don't either. But in the end, after what I think was hours, I blacked out because maybe I overdid it. Just a little. I woke up later with a splitting headache. Raphael. I whined, it hurts. Consider it the consequence of leaving yourself vulnerable. Whatever, I groaned aloud, staring up at the ceiling of the tent I'd passed out in. He's just a human. Even the kobolds are scarier than him. Speaking of. Hello there. Molly was sitting nearby, apparently sorting through some items I guess the kobolds gave him. Wait, there's no way he's human. I stared at him in undisguised awe. He was already drunk when I found him, and now he looks just fine. I believe this human simply has better alcohol tolerance than yourself when not using poison nullification. What? I protested, no way. I was a demon lord for crying out loud. There was no way I was a lightweight. Pardon me, Molly said, but I didn't want to wake you up. Are you also a guest of the kobolds? What? I squinted. No, why would I be? Ah, well, I assumed since you were here when I woke up, and they lent me this tent to sleep in, that. No, Molly, that's stupid. The last thing the kobolds would want is to imply I'm homeless. It would be seen as extreme rudeness to try and offer me help as a demon lord at least, that was the vibe I'd been picking up with monster culture in general. Molly looked at me in confusion for a moment, silently mouthing Molly. But after a minute of staring at each other, he didn't seem to work up the courage to ask, so he changed gears instead. Oh. Well then, who are you? I believe we spoke a lot while drinking, but I don't remember you introducing yourself. Oh. I'm Rimuru. I yawned and sat up, rubbing my sore head in hopes the pain would ease, just a little. Pleasure to meet you, Rimuru. I'm Garden Jalmile. The pudgy old man leaned over and held out his hand to shake. Then he went right back to sorting his things. What? I couldn't help but stare, my eyes following his hands as he bundled up his items and lined things in neat rows, taking inventory. So hi, I'm Rimuru the mass-murdering demon lord. Nice to meet ya. And no reaction. Molly seemed to notice my staring. At first he seemed to try to ignore it, but finally he looked at me and asked, is something wrong? Just like that. I asked hesitantly. Just like what? Wow, he's either really stupid or really brave, I thought. Or maybe he's just more hungover than he looks. We're friends. Just like that. Maybe friends wasn't quite the right term, but we had vented for several hours about our problems. Not to mention that at this point I was pretty sure that, as a demon lord, my standard for friends was limited to anyone who didn't run screaming at the sight of me. I wanted to walk away. I really did. I should have walked away, just let it be, but a much bigger part of me was so incredulous that I had to get to the bottom of it. You heard my name, right? I asked, a little disbelieving. Yes, Rimuru, wasn't it? Molly asked. I waited. He waited. After about a solid minute, it finally clicked for him. Demon, Lord, Rimuru? Molly asked, very slowly. I just nodded. There were no words that would make a good answer to that. Molly immediately dropped into a dejiza. Not again. I'm very sorry, Demon Lord. He panicked. I will never be so rude to you again. Please forgive me for invading your forest. I had nowhere else to go. My only connections left were with the kobolds. I swear I won't cause trouble in your domain, so please have mercy on me. Oh my gosh, stop. I shouted, waving my hands frantically. Stop talking. You're just making things worse. I thought I had just made a friend. Disappointment left a bitter feeling inside me. He seemed like a stalwart guy, and we'd had that deal before, when I was an unknown spirit stealing from his shop. Sentient spirits were no joke. You had to be seriously brave to not show any sign of worry with one around. But here he was, prostrating himself. I knew I shouldn't have said anything. Whatever, I said, standing up. You can stay as long as you like, I don't care. That's when the old merchant stood up, and he stared at me curiously. Maybe his pleas weren't entirely genuine. You're not going to charge me? Why would I? Money's worth nothing here. This is a forest, buddy. I didn't really know how to get that across. Maybe he'd not spent a whole lot of time among the peasants. So, there are no taxes. Molly was sounding more and more enthusiastic now. Well, not for money. I'd imposed some taxes in the form of raiding my subjects' pantries for the food I didn't want to prepare myself. The merchant began to laugh loudly. And you call yourself? Well, maybe that's too rude. You're a mighty creature, insurmountable some might say. He placed his arm over my shoulder and led me out of the tent. This guy was doing a serious 180. Well, not entirely. Speaking of 180, I spotted a certain wise old kobold, speaking completely normally to his kin, unlike earlier. He was totally scamming me. Acting all cute, simple, and innocent so I wouldn't count my change. Old men really couldn't be trusted in this world. Pish-pash. Someone like yourself should be wealthy beyond your wildest dreams. How about you let me handle that? I'll be your personal accountant. He patted my shoulder like we'd been best buddies for years and gave me the widest grin his face could probably manage. Well, I was sure Raphael could handle that, but if the guy wanted to he could knock himself out. I don't have much of a treasure pile, and you'd have a hard time living in my place. This guy sure was odd, but by normal Demon Lord standards it had been hardly any time at all since Inglesia, and I was already starting to go crazy having nothing to do. Knowing I'd probably have to fill decades like this, well, at worst, this would be entertaining. You can do it though, we'll see what harebrained schemes you come up with. Was singles night at the bar your idea? Singles night? Whoa. Whoa, how'd you hear about that? My events are prolific, to be sure, but not so to be heard of from the depths of a place like the Jura Forest. Molly frowned. More than that, why are you trusting me so fast? A good salesman never refuses a yes, but I'm not looking to lose my soul here. I paused for a moment. Right, he doesn't know. I flipped the bottle opener from Molly's bar in Rura in his direction. And just as I was about to teleport away, he latched onto my arm. Wait. Lord Rimuru. Stay here, and we will talk business later. Molly rushed forward, hand outstretched as I teleported away. But in an instant, I was back in the sealed cave. Home sweet home. I let out a sigh. Oh my. I never expected instant travel to work so smoothly. I don't even feel sick. Oh, never mind. Why was the old man here? Raphael? I asked, panicking as, thought acceleration, engaged. He managed to graze you 0.0021 seconds before transport. I ensured he survived the trip. Well, he's dying now. Give me something to like, protect him. Understood. Have him wear this. A little charm on a necklace suddenly showed up in my hand, courtesy of material creation, and I wasted no time putting it around his neck. Nice job, Raphael, I thought, taking a closer look at the charm. Wow, what's this? It's shiny. It is a modified version of my old ranged barrier, so it protects you both against ambient magicules and direct physical trauma, like getting stabbed, especially by someone running toward you on the street. The worst way to go, really. Thus, oddly specific, Molly mumbled. So it will keep me safe, eh? Does that include from you? He asked with a chuckle. I also included a tracker. Wait, isn't that like stalker behavior? I protested. It is a necessary precaution. If you say so. I didn't feel super great about basically tagging Molly like some sort of pet, but Jura was exceptionally easy to get lost in. It'll keep you safe, don't take it off, I answered, deciding to pretend I'd intended for all this to happen. And don't even think about selling it, I warned him after seeing the look on his face, 'cause I know you already did. Of course. Thank you, Lord Rimuru. Molly bowed deeply. Yeah, whatever. It looked like I wasn't going to get to relax just yet. I bent down and scooped up one of the slimes that had come to investigate our arrival, stroking its smooth, rubbery surface. What now? I knew I told Molly we'd talk business sometime, but I hadn't exactly intended to start the conversation now. Lucky for me though, Molly had something else on his mind. So this, Molly held out the bottle opener I'd tossed to him moments ago. How did you get this? You gave it to me, I said, not sure what the point was as I held the slime against my chest. That should have been obvious, I didn't see the big deal about it. You mean to tell me, Molly took a deep breath, that you are the spirit-stealing spirit? I was, I guess, I mumbled. It's not like I asked for that weird nickname. Obviously, I was never gonna get someone to sell it to me legally. I gestured to my childlike face and stature. I'm an adult though, so it's not like you were selling liquor to some underage kid. You are not physically mature enough to be considered an adult yet, we went over this. Shut up. Molly's expression moved through like 6 different emotions in seconds, from surprised, to confused, but finally, he was smiling widely, looking like some mafioso boss. I see, then we already have a working relationship, he grinned. I look forward to our future collaboration, Demon Lord Rimuru. This guy, he totally had a death wish or something. If he tried this with someone like Guy, he'd have his soul stolen or something by now. You have additional guests at the entrance to the sealed cave. I know, I thought. There was a large group of monsters up there, and they'd been very still for a while. I didn't want to deal with it. Letting out a heavy sigh, I groaned and buried my face in the slime I was holding. Trainee Ithray. They came to visit of their own accord, Lord Rimuru. Trainee reappeared in her usual spot with a bow, giving Molly a good fright. Well, tell them to leave. I snapped, that's your job isn't it? As manager or whatever. In some circumstances, yes, Trainee admitted with a frown, but you will need to get used to addressing your subjects. Then I'll talk to them when and where I want, I griped, pointedly storming into my house and flopping down on my bed. Get rid of M. If I may. Molly poked his head through the door, what's going on? Uninvited guests, I grumbled. I told the monsters not to bother me, but apparently they're not great listeners. Trainee stayed respectfully outside the house, but I could still hear her plenty well when she said, they brought offerings. Too bad. Don't care. I grabbed the corner of the covers and roll over, wrapping them around me and hugging the slime to my chest. The offerings include food. I paused for a second, hating myself but also frustrated about the situation I'd gotten myself into with the fat old men invading my private space. And frustration was always made better by snacks. If only the snacks didn't come with even more headaches. What kind of food? I asked. There are several seasonal fruits that I believe you haven't sampled yet, Trainee answered, and it was close but I could swear there was a subtle smirk on her face. New flavors, huh? Fine. I grumbled, teleporting to the mouth of the sealed cave. In front of me was a whole troop of lizardmen, waiting for me on one knee, who immediately let out a mighty, ecstatic shout. Lord Rimuru. They all shouted in sync, bowing their heads. What the? I mumbled, unable to tear my gaze away from the surreal image even as I quietly grabbed a round blue fruit from one of the many baskets of food they had arranged in front of them. Ready now. Gabaru raised a hand straight in the air and snapped 3 times, a 1, 2, 3. Just when I thought this couldn't get worse, they all rose in sync, and started dancing. Oh, glorious Demon Lord Rimuru. And singing. Oh, glorious Rimuru. Our great protector in the forest of Juare. Raphael, I whimpered aloud, when will this end? Brace yourself. The sun. One lizardman sang, quickly followed by another. The stars. The moon. And back in sync, none of these can compare to you, our most benevolent Aruler. I munched on some of the fruit to hide my despair. The lizardman had also brought those magenta berries Trainee gave me shortly after the orc disaster. I made sure to pocket a few of them. They were good, sweet, and tart in just the right balance, and I wanted to grow some. The horrible, embarrassing lyrics continued seemingly endlessly. There were more than 30 lizardmen present, and they were pulling off what was clearly a complex choreographed dance, with Gabaru at its center, flawlessly. It would almost be impressive, if they weren't doing it specifically for it and about me. No, not the Gabaru solo hour. Raphael, what the heck are they wearing? At first, I was so stunned by the sudden serenading that I disregarded it, but no, those definitely weren't the clothes they were wearing before. I believe you will learn shortly. Well, sure, but why was there so much blue in it? And weird patterns, it was nothing like the rough but practical armor I saw them in last time. Well, actually, I thought as I took a bite of a cut of meat that had also been offered, rough is still very much a good way to describe it. Haphazard, even. How long did they spend on this? Finally, at long last, they all assumed positions and shouted in sync, "Hail to our glorious lord." Silence. Well, I didn't want them to have put in all that work for nothing, so I offered some polite claps. Ah, cool. Why are you here? Isn't it obvious, my lord? Gabaru tossed his mane of wiry hair like a true diva. We're celebrating you. Aha, and... With the strange sound of dozens of knees hitting the ground at once, they all fell into the Jesus. Oh no. I moaned inwardly. I've already had enough of people kneeling in the dirt for one day. Lord Rimuru. Gabaru shouted, we humbly petition you to bless these clothes we have made. Although we will never be able to capture your greatness in full, we hope this meager effort has pleased you. Wait, this was starting to sound like Gabaru. I said sternly, and the boisterous lizardman jumped nervously. Why? So we can worship you more fully, of course. He shouted, lifting his head to beam innocently at me. Crap, how do I let them down gently? Actually, screw this. I wanted some peace in my cave and to start a garden, and these morons were in my way. How about no? I raised a hand politely. What? Gabaru was stunned. I really appreciate your enthusiasm, but please don't do this again, I said honestly. Actually, you can keep bringing food. I don't mind that. Lord Rimuru. Oh no, he seemed halfway to tears as he fell to the ground to grovel. Please forgive us. Was our devotion not enough? Oh no. No, Gabaru, it's fine. I tried to comfort him, I just don't like being worshipped. What? Oh, that was apparently an even bigger bomb. How could someone as great as you not wish to bask in the adoration of the masses? He asked, practically pleading. Let's just call it a difference in taste, okay? I said, strained. But Lord Rimuru, truly none in this forest is greater than you. Gabaru proclaimed. Yeah, that's maybe true or something, I don't know, I guess it depends on how you define that stuff, I protested, but this is awkward. Awkward. Gabaru somehow managed to fall backwards from a Dajiza, practically fainting. Don't even try asking how he did that because I have no answer. Lord Gabaru. His subordinates cried out, rushing to support him. It's okay, Lord Gabaru. One of them said, we simply haven't learned what Lord Rimuru likes. I'm sure your great charm will sway him in no time. Ah, guys, I'm right here. Yes, Lord Gabaru. There was a particular trio of lizardmen that were being extra supportive, even though they all crowded around him. You are the greatest lizardman in history. Truly, none of us but you have the power to peer into Lord Rimuru's desires. Ah, guys. I said awkwardly. But making myself the center of attention again turned out to be a mistake. Immediately the whole troop fell down at my feet and exclaimed, Lord Rimuru. Please give Lord Gabaru another chance. Raphael. Among monsters, figures of authority are equivalent to deities in most cultures. I suggest playing along. Ugh, if Raphael says so. Look. Gabaru. The lizardmen parted to allow me a clear path to their despondent leader, who was sitting on his knees in shame. This was great, okay. I said, trying to be reassuring as I rubbed between his horns. You guys are great. I don't need any more devotion than what you're already doing, okay? Gabaru sucked in a huge gasp, looking up at me with stars in his eyes. Truly? He asked. Okay, Gabaru had to have gotten brain damage or something since I last saw him. He used to treat me like a person, not this freaky cult stuff. There is no evidence of physical damage to the brain of the individual, Gabaru. Well, there goes any hopes of curing him. I, bless you with my, blessings. No fancy clothes or dance needed, okay. I said gently while giving him an awkward pat on the top of his head. Another big gasp from Gabaru. Thank you, Lord Rimuru. He fell down at my feet again, sobbing as his scales seemed to shine a little extra bright. We lizardmen will follow you for the rest of our days. Great. See ya later then, I waved, quickly extracting myself from the awkward position and backpedaling towards the cave. Farewell, Lord Rimuru. Gabaru and the other lizardmen shouted as they began to mount up on their monster steeds and leave, until we meet again. As soon as they were out of typical magic sense range, I collapsed into a pile of slime. Good work, Master. Hey, Raphael. I asked tiredly before realizing I'd asked that out loud. I put a stop to that right away since I didn't want anyone to think I was crazy and talking to people that weren't there. Raphael gave no response, but I could feel the skill waiting expectantly. Was it just me, or was Gabaru glowing for a second? It was just your imagination. Yeah, I'm not buying that. Explain what you did to him. It was just your imagination. Not gonna tell me, huh? Fine. Keep your secrets, but I know you did something. I was just hoping he wouldn't evolve and transform into some hot dude, because I didn't think I could mentally handle something like that. The level of disturbing that would be was enough to make me run for my life and sanity. Now that I was alone and not dealing with any nagging dryads or unwanted lizardy fan clubs, I was able to think a little more deeply about some of the things Molly revealed to me. Mainly, that there was a Blumundian viscount named Kazak involved in the elf abductions, enough that he was trying to make shady deals with businessmen like Molly. That was a starting point for me to work off of to possibly do something about the situation. But a better way for me to gather more info would be to talk to Brescia, the elf girl that had been with those slavers before I had taken care of them. It was debatable how much she would have to say, but I still needed to speak with her. I teleported back to Molly and Trainee, only to stumble into a strange situation. Trainee was standing off to the side, wearing that smug, sly scary smile I was familiar with when she was harassing me. Molly had beads of sweat collecting on his forehead, but also he had sat down on the ground and was currently being swarmed by slimes. And I mean swarmed. Up to his neck in them. What? I stared. Molly looked up at me, slightly nervous. They aren't trying to eat me, are they? No. I kept staring, unable to take my eyes off the sight. Trust me, you'd know if they were trying to do that. They just really like you. I could feel the slime's communication signals from here, all happy and cheerful about the softmen and the barrier that I guess smelled like me, since it was my magic that made it. Why would they? Molly asked in confusion. Maybe it's because you're squishy like them, I shrugged. I don't mean that as an insult, I'm squishy too. I sat down on the edge of the slime pile, and some of the little monsters began to migrate over to me, pressing against me and shoving their magicules in my direction. So, I said, an idea beginning to form. You know a lot about the Western nations, right? I would like to think so, Molly said. I'm going to bring you with me to talk to someone, I said. She's an elf, a victim of that Kazak guy, I think, or at least of whatever group he's working with. I need information on him, and having your knowledge would be helpful. I don't know what questions to ask. Of course, Lord Rimuru. Molly dredged his arm out of the slime pile and saluted. Anything you ask. Lord Rimuru, Trainee, who'd left after I had returned, appeared again. Come to think of it, that expression on her earlier probably meant something happened between her and Molly. I didn't want to know. What now? I'm about to leave, I asked, a bit irritated. The bovoids and equinoids are requesting an audience, she said. Seriously? I gaped, not sure whether to be astonished or enraged. The lizardmen were here not even 5 minutes ago. This is part of your duties, she gently reminded me. Duties, schmoodies, I grumbled, gently telling the slimes to let me up. Haven't I done enough today? Molly, you're coming up with me. I'm not going to risk someone else showing up before we can leave. Too impatient to wait for this old man to stumble to his feet, I grabbed a fistful of his hair and teleported us up top. Arguing and shouting and posturing at each other were a bovoid and an equinoid that I didn't recognize. What? I tilted my head. What happened to the other guys? These weren't the tribe leaders I met at the audience thing Trainee set up. Lord Rimuru. They shouted in unison, immediately dropping to their knees. Lord Rimuru. My father's duty has passed to me, the greatest of the bovoids. The strange bovoid sat up, casting a scornful hand in the equinoid's direction. He fell in honorable combat, and now I lead our tribe. Allow me, who is greater even than he was, and certainly greater than all the equinoids, to serve as your right hand. Nonsense. The equinoid spat, thrusting his long head forward. Your chief died ashamed to his race, sniveling on the ground like a worm, begging for mercy with his last breath. Unlike my father, who fought to the bitter end to hold victory from his grasp. Lies. My father died in honor. The bovoid screamed, it was yours that cried like an infant in his last moments. You dare insult my father, and my entire clan. The equinoid jumped to his feet, roaring. Allow me to prove to you, Lord Rimuru, that I am the one worthy of being by your side. Would you two meatheads cut it out with the WWE skit already? I demanded, my aura flaring in anger and pressing down on the two nuisances. Molly, standing close behind me, began choking from the pressure, so I had to let up, but it did its job. Forgive me, my lord. No, forgive me, my lord. The two monsters both dropped into Jesus. The chiefs of the bovoids and equinoids are dead. I asked harshly, half in disbelief. The former chiefs, my lord. The equinoid answered. How? I demanded. Those were powerful monsters. If something killed them both, then I would have to deal with it, which was probably why they were here in the first place. My trip to the elf village was probably going to be put off. They killed each other. The bovoid replied, in a duel to redeem their honor after being rejected by your mightiness. They what? So they tried to duel to the death, and they both died. How did they even pull that off? My aura was starting to stir the branches of the trees nearby, and the two monsters in front of me suddenly went very still and quiet as I grappled with this sudden revelation. I didn't mean to get anyone killed. They were both being nuisances during the audiences, so I sent them away to cool off a little. I never intended to kill them. This was my fault. It was their fault, but mostly it was mine, for not putting my foot down immediately. I sucked in a breath. "This is a decree from your demon lord," I said in a steady, ominous tone. "The bovoids and the equinoids are forbidden from entering in conflict with each other again. I order you both to vacate the territory you've been so annoyingly insistent on fighting over and live somewhere else." The bovoid and equinoid chiefs glanced at each other. "But my lord," the bovoid said, "which of us will be your bodyguard?" "My what?" I snapped, my anger pulsing through me and out into my magicules. "Your bodyguard, my lord," the equinoid repeated. "I promise to serve you wholeheartedly." "I can serve you even better," the bovoid insisted. I was going to scream. It was like I'd been talking to a wall. Sure, I could order people around all I liked. But these monsters were too hard-headed to listen, and I was sure the older individuals among them were even worse than these two. How was I going to ensure that these idiots didn't wipe each other out? "I forbid you from fighting each other," I repeated, making sure to be extra clear because I was certain they'd misinterpret otherwise. "Abandon your lands, find a new place to settle down, or... well, shoot." Death wouldn't faze monsters like these, and the goal of this was to stop people from dying, but I needed some sort of punishment. And I wasn't inclined to just show up and torture someone every time they broke the rule, because I was certain that was going to happen, often. "What about marriage, my lord?" Molly spoke up behind me, causing me to whip my head around in surprise. I'd almost forgotten he was there. "Yeah." A wicked grin crossed my face. "Yeah, that could work." Who knew if these monsters even had the usual concept of marriage, but I was going to find out either way. I turned back to the two groveling Majin. "How foolish of you to believe I need protecting," I hissed, turning up the Demon Lord dial a few notches for extra effect. "I'm deeply insulted." The horror that came over both their faces was almost funny. They immediately both started babbling apologies and excuses. Silence. Good, that did the trick. From this point forward, the bovoids and equinoids must cease their war with each other and find somewhere else to settle. If you don't. I paused, the chief of each tribe will be married to the other, and forced to spend the rest of their lives together. They were both silent, but my aura pressing down again got them each to start stuttering. "As you wish, my lord," the bovoid said. "Why yes, as you wish," the equinoid added. "Now get going," I snapped, "and don't bother me with moronic squabbles like this again." They stood, bowed, and rushed off. Oh my goodness. I sighed, immediately collapsing back on the ground and withdrawing my aura. If Molly weren't there I'd have melted on the spot, but I had to maintain some semblance of dignity. "I thought my knees were going to give out on me for a moment there," Molly commented, looking down at me. "You have no right to say that," I said tiredly. "Marriage? You're more of a demon lord than I am, that's some evil mastermind stuff. Did you see the looks on their faces?" "Ahihi," Molly chuckled nervously. "I simply saw you might have been in a bind, and tried to offer my take on the situation." "Yeah. Thanks, I guess." I lay there for a moment, then sighed. "Okay," I said, getting to my feet. "Elves. We need to visit the elves."